I call to order the June 26, 2017 town council meeting of the town of Sunset Beach. This is a work session. We've got a draft agenda review, amendments and approval. I have one that I would like to that's after, it's a 7 o'clock. I'd like to move that to, item 7, C on the old business, that's discussion concern chapter 99 park rules and uses. I'd like to move that up in the middle of the presentations after the Eagle Scout presentation. Does the council have any problem with that?
Nope.
Okay. The other, are there any other amendments to the draft agenda?
I've got a couple. Number one, is this, yeah. Annual report, I sent you all a couple of small changes. I hope that was okay. Can we put this to bed at this point and just have it, or make those changes and send it out?
I would like to put it on the agenda because I have some concerns.
All right, well, that would be, it's old business, so it'd be I under 7.
Okay. And also, I would like to put on the agenda the motion or the confusion that has been created that caused us to receive approximately 200 emails regarding the farmers market
That's
in the park.
Rich,
It is on the agenda, Rich. Can we wait
Rich,
till
that's
we get
with
there?
regard to the one I just moved up, that the discussion, it's with regard to discussion concerning chapter 99 of the park rules and uses. I moved that up because there's obviously a substantial amount of public interest in it, and I don't want to have them sit through the other presentation.
What number is that, Bob?
It's
What letter?
7C. We moved up to an earlier spot.
Well, 7C, okay.
I have a question. I don't know if it needs to be an agenda item or not. For the fire commission that's being established by the county, my question is, have we been approached by the county for recommendations for who would be on that committee? I assume we have been, and council should be a part of that discussion and decision-making process.
Well, all I can tell you is I had discussions with Randy Thompson on Friday, and they haven't, the county commissioners haven't taken any position on it at all, except that the initial committee is probably going to be the formation of whatever the county's going to do, and they don't want anybody to be there anymore 2 years in succession. But he didn't discuss anything about who it was or what positions they might be in or anything like that, or how he wanted to find out.
Susan, have you or the fire chief been called? All right, so I'm just suggesting that at the point that they ask for feedback, that council should be approached.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have another issue. I don't think it needs to be an agenda item, but I need everybody here to start thinking about this. And I'm going to be brave and raise this issue. Stormwater is going to be I'm anticipating a $3 to $4 million project. We just approved the budget for fiscal 17-18, which establishes a tax rate. And I assume that's the way it is for fiscal 17-18. So we're going to have to wait until June of 18 if we have to increase taxes at all. My thoughts on this I had 3 thoughts on this. I'm not saying we're going to have a tax increase. Please don't go home and think that's what's going to happen. But we need to think about how we're going to pay for this. One possibility is to have, let's say, a 2%, 2-cent tax increase where the money only goes for stormwater repairs. And after the system is put in place, drop it to a 1% thing for maintenance. Because our current budget is not going to cover the costs of either building or maintaining that stormwater system.
Well, Karen,
Another possibility, hang on one second, is fire fees are theoretically going up 25%. That's an increase to our people. Rather than return that in terms of a tax decrease, maybe those funds relieve some of the pressure the town has to pay to support the fire department, and that money should go into a special fund. We need to start thinking about establishing a special fund for stormwater and come up with some creative ways in how we're going to come up with the money.
Well, the stormwater, I've circulated emails that suggested that we need a capital improvement plan, which we don't have. We've got a capital improvement projects that we went through with the budgeting, but we don't have certain numbers, and we can't complete it until we have numbers for the stormwater management plan. And with regard to the stormwater management plan, that would be part of the capital improvement plan that we would adopt, that I would hope we would adopt sometime this year.
I don't have any problem with that. I just want people to start thinking about this.
Well, it would be part of that.
Mr. Mayor, I think our discussion is a little way too premature. We have stormwater, we may have island sidewalks, we're going to be widening 179. The CIP, there's nothing in the budget, the fiscal year 18 that regarding the CIP. And yet in the annual report, it says that we are in sound financial condition. That's one of my complaints about the report.
All right, we're just on the agenda right now. All those in favor of the modified agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, mayor and council comments and discussions. We've already had a couple of council discussions.
I have one.
John?
Over this past weekend, our Sunset Beach citizens volunteer group, Sunset Vision, we're pleased to report that our first Sunset Beach Nature and Wildlife Art Show and sale that was held 22 to 24 June was a great success, thanks in large part to the high-quality artwork submitted by local artists, the hard work by the Sunset Vision volunteers and friends, the catering by Backstreet Cafe, and a host of others. As a result of the art show and sale, we have reached our goal to raise sufficient funds to procure a commercial-grade bird and wildlife viewing binocular system costing about $6,000 to be installed at the Birdwalk on Shoreline Drive West. I want to thank all who contributed to this successful event. And rest assured that we will consult with Dustin to see how he suggests we mount the binocular system. And Sunset Vision will cover the cost for whatever materials may be required for the installation. We don't want the town to incur any additional expenses on account of this project. And Pete Larkin and myself are both members of that group. Sort of related to this, I want to clarify that last week I sent out an email promoting the art show. By mistake, I sent it using my town council email address instead of my personal email. To be clear, there was no intent whatsoever to imply that the town of Sunset Beach or the town council was endorsing or promoting the art show. And thank you to Mr. Serrato for bringing this mistake to my attention. Thank you.
I have one announcement to make for, it's hot off the presses, it's current. Friday, I received notice that the de-annexation of Sunset Creek Commons was assigned, it had been assigned to 2 different House committees and was assigned to a 3rd House committee on last Tuesday, June 20th, and they set a hearing for 3:30 this afternoon. I couldn't attend because I had 2 other commitments. Councilman Larkin attended because that's why he's not here. He'll be here later. He had to go up to Raleigh to appear, and at the hearing was held this afternoon before the House Finance Committee. Appearances by Councilman Larkin, the property owner, and Congressman Eiler, and the property owner and Congressman Eiler spoke in favor of the de-annexation, and on a split vote, the committee reported it out, which means it goes to the House floor now to act on the de-annexation. I spent the weekend doing a letter that I emailed to the 32 members of the committee expressing on behalf of the town, the objection and the reason for the objections. And I got a confirmation that they were all received, so I assume all the committee members received the letter as to our opposition to it, but it's been reported out of committee and it's now on the House floor. All right, now the 7 o'clock meeting. I'd like to call that to order and request that you join me in pledging the allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the proposed UDO amendment for Article 10 Landscaping Buffering Requirements, Section 10.06 Preservation of Trees. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing is now open for any public comment on the proposed UDO amendment regarding preservation of trees. If any member of the public has comment, please step forward, state your name and address.
Karen Joseph, 915 Sandpiper Bay Drive. I would like you and the planning board and whoever else is going to discuss this to take into consideration the fact that golf courses have many hundred pine trees, and I know the community where I live, many hundred of those pine trees have been arbitrarily removed. And I know that Mr. Forrester has a concern about trees on private property in golf courses, but for us it has been just 200 trees will disappear, and it has a detrimental effect on our community as a whole. So when you discuss this, if this could be considered, that they would need to get a permit if they're going to cut down more than X number of trees. I believe that it used to be that way. I can't recall when it changed, but I know that it used to be that way. So I ask your consideration of that point.
May I make one comment? Karen, we worked together. I remember you attended those UDO things, and I
Right.
was thinking about that this afternoon. I remember the golf courses coming in asking for 25 trees, but it wasn't specified that it was heritage trees. It was just trees. And somehow it's lost that focus. Now, I think there's probably a happy medium in there, and we'll talk about that. But
Yeah,
do you have that recollection?
I do recall that the language in some form did exist, and it went beyond heritage trees.
Thank you.
They were two separate categories.
All
Thank
right,
you.
well, thank you. So the public is aware that the council consideration of that adoption is under new business. Isn't it new business? But it's later in the agenda. It's either new business or old business. The next item, anybody else have a comment with regard to the public hearing on the preservation of trees? None appearing. I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is presentations. The first is an Eagle Scout project to enhance public fishing pier area at the boat ramp. Will Warner. Mr. Warner?
All right, hi, my name is Will Warner. Do my Eagle Scout project. Let's see, what do I point at? Do I have to turn it on, or how does this work? Okay, all right.
Somebody go find a 12-year-old.
So about me, 17 years old, rising senior at West Brunswick High School. I'm a member of the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 201 in Sunset Beach. We meet at the Seaside United Methodist Church. And so my project overview, I'm going to be enhancing an area adjacent to the boat ramp by the fishing pier off to the right. And I was going to clean up that area, put in two landscape beds, one behind the portable toilet to enhance that area, and then off to the right of the fishing pier, another landscape bed, and then from the roadway to the fishing pier, add a Hatteras ramp to make that fishing pier more accessible, and then under the large oak tree, far right, 2 or 3 picnic tables. So this is the current area, what's popping up on your screens right now, how it is right now, the current condition. And the, yep. And so and so like I said, the Hatteras ramp would go from the road right there on the right picture, straight down to the fishing pier. And then off to the left on that picture, take out the succulents and knock out roses, leave the existing crepe myrtles, and enhance that bed, make it look pretty. One more. Thank you. All right, so the picnic tables, I'll be installing 2 or 3, depending on how much space those end up taking up. They're 6 foot long, all pressure treated lumber, galvanized hardware, and like I said, they'll be going up under the oak tree off to the right. And then the Hatteras ramp, like I said, it would connect the roadway to the public fishing pier. It's approximately, it's going to be approximately 35 feet long, about 5 feet wide. Yeah, right now, as of right now, it's just a dirt, like pea gravel path. And then so bedding and landscaping, first off, the entire area will be removed of all debris, and then 1 landscape bed off to the left behind the portable toilet to enhance that area, and then 1 off to the right of the Hatteras ramp. That would be both of them all comprised of all natural hardwood mulch. And then, like I said, use the existing crepe myrtles, and then at the end add lantana, pink muhly grass, gardenias, and then maybe some daylilies or other perennials that would do well in the environment and wouldn't require much watering at all. So I got a CAD program. Keith Berkunis with Outdoor Innovations helped me, and we sat down, made this 3D model. So off to the right there is the boat ramp, and then you have the boat ramp dock, and then extending past that is the area I'd be working with. So adding in the 2 beds, Hatteras ramp, and picnic tables. You got one more. There's an aerial shot. You can see the picnic tables up under the oak tree there. And then that's a view from the roadside. Hatteras ramp, like I said, extends straight down. So time frame, my work days would be mostly in July, possibly extending into the 1st of August. Most on Saturdays, that's when I can get most of my help there to help me out. And then completion, final paperwork with the Boy Scouts, final draft, everything, August, early September. That's what I'm shooting for. And thank you, Ms. Susan Parker.
Questions?
Yeah, I have several questions.
Yes, ma'am.
The cost of the materials, who's paying for that?
Right, so as far as the Boy Scouts, any funds that they have that they want to help me with, they could, whatever they have in their funds, they could donate some of that money. I know Lowe's Home Improvement, if I go to them and type up what I have, the materials I need, and just an outline of my project, they will donate most of the lumber or whatever I need. Keith Berkunis with Outdoor Innovations said he's willing to help whatever I need as far as plants and mulch goes.
Have you spoken at all to wildlife? I mean, I thought we rent that space out to them. I mean, we don't really control it.
No, we do. We actually are responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of that area. It is town property. We have talked to Wildlife Resources, and we have also talked to CAMA in preparation for this presentation.
And they both gave the approval. The only thing I'd be careful about, and I think you need one more discussion about this, is I hate to put in landscaping that is going to require a lot of work. The problem sometimes with, bulbs and things like that, after a few years, they've got to be divided, or they start failing. And one of the reasons why we use things like the cactus and stuff like that, as ugly as it is it requires no maintenance. So to the extent that we're changing things and that it's now adding to the areas that the town has to maintain, I just want to make sure we're not taking on a burden that we don't want.
We currently already maintain that area, and he was given direction, Will was given direction to make sure that these would be, would not require any high maintenance or additional water. And he's got a list of those, and he's contacted with this landscaper in order to do that. He's been working on this since February. I think that's when I first announced it, and it's a well thought out plan. And we, as staff, firmly, it's just one more thing that'll augment our community and make it beautiful.
I like the concept, and I wish to thank you very much. My only concern is with the town. Why do we need that porta-john there? There's bathrooms right across the street.
Well,
If we're concerned about beautification, that's not very beautiful.
I would like to remove that porta-john, however, that is paid for by the state, and I can talk to them again about removing it. But apparently people don't want to walk 300 feet to flush toilets. They want to walk right off the fishing pier, or after they pull their boat in front, they use the porta-john and
I don't know what you
unload their
said, but is
boat.
it going to go away?
She's going to try and make it go away, but.
I'll work on it.
That's really not an issue for,
Will, I think it's a good
For Will.
idea. Will, I think it's a good idea. Good luck with it.
Thank you, sir.
do I have a
And there may
motion?
be several other groups that would be willing to provide
was-
some assistance to
I
you.
was going to say that. I'm
So-
sure you could get additional assistance if you need it.
Yes, ma'am. My Boy Scout troop, like 10, 12 scouts, and then Keith and his crew with Outdoor Innovations, a couple neighbors. I've talked to a bunch of volunteers. I probably have 20 to 25 saying they'd help me.
And you've run this through the town, and the town has given you, good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Wait, we had a motion. We need a motion to approve the project and have him proceed with the
So
project.
moved.
It's to have him go ahead and do it. The motion is to approve it and have him proceed with his Eagle Scout project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, Will.
Good
Thank you,
job,
Will.
Will.
The next item is an item I moved up. The reason I moved it up on the agenda is that I think the room is filled with members of the public that have interest in this particular agenda item, and I don't want to, the other presentations may take some time. It's going to be before, if we take it now, it will be before the public comments on the agenda items, which you'll still have an opportunity to address that at that time, but I just wanted to move that item up for the purposes of the members of the public. That is the item that's noted as concerning Chapter 99 Park Rules and Uses. And Councilman Scott, you had a statement you want to make?
Well, it's not a statement. I just wanted to say, I'm the one who put this on the agenda. It had nothing to do with, it was never the intent of anybody on this council to say, no, we don't want this market to exist. That is not what's going on. However, as the years have gone on, we need, as a town, to periodically look at our rules, look at our fee schedule, and I will say, despite the, we've gotten 100 or 2, however many emails we've gotten from people who are saying, please save the market, I have also gotten a number of calls and a number of emails from people saying they're all in favor of the market, but we need to look at the fees that we're charging for profit organizations opposed to nonprofit. And I did a little research on this, and there are some things that we ought to be looking at. If we raise fees, how do we handle a small event as opposed to a larger event? You know, there's a lady who does yoga in the park. Whatever fees for her event might be significantly less as a low-impact activity than it would be to a different group which might have a high-impact activity. So we've been talking about this, and because of Pete Larkin's absence and the fact that I don't think people realize that we weren't talking about abolishing the market, that we are not talking about that at all, we've decided that it would make sense if we move this and give everybody a chance to weigh in to what will be changed of July 18th council meeting, although that date is probably going to get changed at the end of this meeting because of a conflict with John Corbett can't make the 18th. So we're going
Correct.
to change that date. But we'll put it on that agenda for a discussion. So that's where we stand on this. I suggest those of you who are here to save the market, you can go home and don't worry about it.
Rich, you wanted to say something? Did you want to say something with regard to that?
There has been accusations, which I call fake news, perpetrated by a member of this council. And it indicated both Carol Scott and somehow and I don't know how the I got involved. We're planning to, there was a campaign to indicate that the farmers market was going to be discontinued. That is totally, totally false. And I am angry that a council member would trigger nearly 200 emails that our mayor had to respond to. Now, to me, knowing this council member's wife has a direct financial interest because it is a profit-making organization, is a conflict of interest, purely. And I've dealt with conflicts of interest for 40 years during my career. And to insinuate that two council members were going to disband the farmers market is fake news. It was a lie. And I am angry at my fellow colleague for doing that. And he should apologize to this community, to me, to Carol, to the mayor, and to the town. Let me tell you something. If I did this, and most of you know me, I would resign.
For the bottom line is that there's no action is going to be taken or any further discussion is going to be had on that agenda item tonight. It is going to be carried to the July 18th date, or we may have to have a need for a special meeting, not on that alone, but on something else, which would be a meeting before the July 18th date, but it would be publicized and whatnot. But the reason I wanted to move it up was so that anybody's here that they're concerned about that issue, there's going to be no further discussion of it tonight. There'll be no action on it tonight.
Do I get to make a comment?
Hold on. Did
Do him first.
okay, go ahead, John.
The only fake news in this whole process was that I identified Mr. Serrato and Mayor Pro Tem Scott as campaigning to do away with the farmers market. That's the fake news. What was happening is, and I think that the outpouring of the emails in the park, on the park, is impressive. To be clear, yes, I am married to one of the waterfront market owner-managers, and all of the owner-managers were identified to the council as far back as November 11th when they wrote an email to the council on that matter. I would not call the public concern a PR spin or fake news. Rather, I would recognize it as an effort to mobilize the public to express their views on the park, and I am openly part of that mobilization effort. The public expressing their support for activities in the park and the enjoyment of the park should not bother any of us. Our town park and all its activities are a fantastic Sunset Beach success story, and I believe the town council should take the lead in promoting the park as well as other activities that showcase Sunset Beach. We have trouble communicating clearly, then we ought to work on that process. Thank you, and that's basically all I'm permitted to say at this time.
I have one comment.
Bob, I'd like
Wait,
to say something.
go ahead. Go ahead.
First of all, he opened Pandora's box last week by saying to everybody that the council wanted to disband that market. Untrue, fake news, Rich is right.
And I
agree
didn't
with
say
Rich-
that.
I agree with Rich Serrato. You should resign.
It's not going to happen.
From that ego you have.
Susan?
Mayor, since a large majority of the residents and visitors in this room are here for this item, and we pulled it forward, I would hope that we would give them an opportunity, if we move the public comment up on agenda items, to do so now so that they can have an opportunity to speak, unless, of course, they want to sit through dredging and shoreline, shoreline dredging and the street sidewalk. But I think since they're here for this very item, I would hope that we could accommodate those so they can go home and enjoy the rest of their
It's moving up the
evening.
whole public comment.
Just on this issue.
No, well, no, on everything.
It'd be on
On
everything.
The comment that I was going to make
Wait,
is,
hang on, you can't move it up and not give people a chance at the end of the meeting to weigh in
oh,
also.
absolutely.
No,
Th-
that's
We're
still
talking
there.
about comment on agenda items.
This is agenda item.
The comment that I was want to make is that when we went into a closed session, the motion was to discuss legal advice with regard to Jaguar's Lair, the West Side development, and a conflict, council conflict. That was the council conflict. There was discussion with the attorney in the closed session that so it's not being, the position taken by or espoused by Councilman Serrato is not being ignored. The attorney hasn't had sufficient time to be able to answer that, and that's been put off. He's going to provide a legal advice with regard to whether it constitutes a conflict or not. So I should have said that when we came out of the closed session, but that'll be for another day. But it's not being ignored. Okay. Do I have a motion to move up the? It's item 4, which is public comments on agenda items only. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on the agenda items. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per speaker, and when you step forward to make your comments, if you raise your, if you state your name and address, please. Okay, and I'll recognize you. Just raise your hand and I'll. Anybody want to make comments with regard to the agenda items? Ma'am?
Good evening, Elena Edwards. Sorry.
I'm sorry, what is your name?
Elena Edwards. I live on Berry Street. This is concerning the market. I just feel like it's a very special thing for Sunset Beach. I see families from the tiniest tots to great-grandparents all enjoy an activity together that's surrounded around community and art and beautiful surroundings. And I think it's very special for this area. And we don't want to see it go away.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other public comment? Sir?
David Hutnick, 915 Shoreline Drive. Do you mind if we speak together?
No.
So,
I assume you're associated together.
yes. While we love the market, I go to it almost every week. We're actually here on behalf of Coastal Race Productions. We're a local company that puts on for-profit races. And recently we put on Run Sunset Beach. It's the largest race in Brunswick County. Had a great success. We had 1,700 runners that came to Sunset Beach. They came from 28 different states. And so just a couple stats about our runners, and the impact on our local economy. Brunswick County Economic Development Center, they estimate that the average tourist spends $170 per day. And then our surveys show that they bring 1.3 spectators with them individually and spend an average of 3 nights in our local area. So that total, 1,700 runners spending $170 per day, spending 3 nights and bringing 1.3 spectators. If you do the math, that's a $1.1 million economic impact on our local area. So, you know, restaurants are full, hotels, you can't find an open spot in hotels for miles, and it's a really big impact on our beautiful community. Many of these runners have never even been to Sunset Beach before, so it's the first chance they get to come.
So yes, also on that same note, one of our stats is that running in the United States has switched primarily from being male-dominated to women-dominated. And so typically, I would say 54 to 57% of runners in the middle distances of the half marathon are women. Our race is actually a little higher than that, and we have about a 67% female runner to male runner. The Running in the USA did a study a few years ago that indicated that the target audience for tourism are females in the 40 to 49 age bracket, and that is the largest group of runners that we have coming to our race. And the important statistic about that is that they are the ones that are making the decisions for the family on where they're going to vacation. And when they go to the destination races and have a good experience, they typically do come back the following year for a vacation or book for even a year or so out. So there are lots of numbers and statistics we can throw at you on that. But runners are really a good demographic group of people. They're the kind of people you want to come into your communities. They have expendable income. They typically take very good care of their area. And we thoroughly enjoyed and had rave reviews about the park this past May.
Thank you. Other members of the public comment? Sir?
I'm Fred Lathrop. I'm with Bennett Vineyards. We're about 3.5 hours up the coast. We have frequently started the farmers market here when it first opened. The big thing is really it brings jobs to the area. We employ people at different markets. If you kill these markets here, you're killing jobs. Also, the people that come to these markets spend money, gas. The people here that are the vendors, they also, I drive 3.5 hours down here. I got to buy gas to go back. I stop and buy a meal to go back. So we do bring money into this community. The other thing is that it is a public, the park is built for the community. That's what it's built for. This is a wide variety of our community right here. Good people trying to make a living. And we've found this in other places too, where they're trying to push us out or do away with the farmers markets. And I think it's a great enhancement because you're bringing from all walks of your community in here, farmers and from the vendors and also artisans that come in that have no other forum to work here. So that's what I got to say about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir?
Thank you. It's a joy to be here, listen to the council.
Your name?
Have everybody here. This is the Nelsons from 704 Shoreline. We have Seascape Designs. It's a vendor, participation that we have at the market. And we think that the council and the great leadership that we have in marketing for the show could work in harmony. We don't see anything wrong with the participation in the park from everybody. So we see that sometimes there's something said that may be misconstrued the wrong way. However, we can see that the leadership for the park, our leadership, and the council can work together. So we can continue to build a great participation from everybody in Sunset Park, at our park. The park, the safety of the park. I've met the new chief here. We talk with them and participate with different children, different venues that come in the park. Everything works in such good harmony. So what I can see is that something was probably said in a miscommunication way, but we see the park as a viable asset for Sunset Beach. And we love it. We want everybody to participate in harmony. We enjoy all the business people that we have. We enjoy the council. We enjoy the leadership that we have for the park, everything. And if everybody works in harmony, everybody will be happy. And we'll continue to have a viable asset for the city of Sunset Beach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comment?
Maria Blatch, I'm on Twisted Oak. I'm actually here, I've heard about the elimination of the market at the park, was a bit disappointed and was not happy with that. And even more, when I attended a yoga class Saturday, heard that they wanted to eliminate that as well, which is for charity. And so I'm voicing my comment on that, and I also went today and went door to door and got 35 signatures against that. I would have gotten more if I had more time.
Well,
So-
you have more time before the council's going to take
Nobody
any
is
kind of action.
banning the market or the yoga thing.
That's what happens when you have fake news, John.
Okay, well, this, I'm just letting you know that the people are not happy with this. Okay, that's
Thank
all
you.
I have to say.
Thank you. Other public comment? Ma'am?
I'm fully aware that there's some miscommunication here. I think that, like everybody else, I want to...
Her name.
My name
Oh,
is
yes.
Barbara Spraga. I'm at 611 Triangle. My parents have lived here since '89, and I came here last year. I've been here a year. Love it here.
Good.
And was very happy when the market, when I saw the banner for the market to come, you know, that was going to happen. I entered and I became a vendor. I submitted my application. Market is incredibly well run. I know that this is not being pulled out from under us after what I'm hearing today, but I just wanted to take this moment to speak on behalf of how it works for us, the artists and the produce people that come. You know, it's a pure market. You don't get that in Sunset Beach. You don't get that hardly anywhere. We've got it here in Ocean Isle. We got fresh produce coming to our door here. We've got artisans that you cannot duplicate because everything has to be pure here. Just want you to understand that aspect of it and how important that is to this community and how we connect to other communities, because we meet people from all over the world that come here, and we get to be the representatives of Sunset Beach. And we get to share our stories of this town, which we love so much, with people from afar, anywhere in the world, who come here to this beautiful place. And we get to talk about it, and they get to talk about where they are. And we connect in ways we never would have been able to connect before. So I'm a little emotional because this sense of community that has developed here is so important, and I think we take it for granted, and I don't think we give it enough credence. I think it's really important that we just keep that in mind however it goes forward.
Thank you. Ma'am?
You guys didn't all have to stand. There was an empty seat here for quite a while.
We don't want it. Karen Dombrowski, 719 Fairway Drive East. I want to build on what was just spoken about with the sense of community and how if we all work together as people and as organizations, we can make this community a much better place. For example, I'm with Old Bridge Preservation Society, but when the visitors come in on Sundays, Carmel, with the Turtle Program, hands out our information for the week and our rack card, so people know what's going on at the Old Bridge. So they attend the Turtle Program, they know what's going on with the turtles. She tells them about programs at the Old Bridge. They come to the Old Bridge to our free programs on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I say to them, do you know there's a farmer's market that's going on at the park on Thursday? And half of them will say yes, that I've seen the banner, and some will say no. And I say, it's made in North Carolina, we have fresh produce. So we're working together, we're respecting each other as people and organizations for the good of the community. And I just want to say, I'm vice president of Old Bridge Preservation Society, an organization that receives no funding from the town of Sunset Beach. We've created a landmark in town, a museum, and we host free events at Easter, July 4th, Christmas, as well as the summer programs. We are able to be financially independent due to generous donations, merchandise sales, and our signature fundraiser, Strawberry and Wine Fest. We raise thousands of dollars at this fundraiser that we use to upgrade and maintain the OBPS site and create new museum exhibits. This event was previously held at Silver Coast Winery, and our Sunset Beach sponsors, including Sunset Properties, Island Breeze, Pelican Bookstore, to name a few, and our patrons begged us to relocate to Sunset Beach Park. The 2017 Strawberry and Wine Fest at our park was the best ever. It was well attended. We raised thousands of dollars that will keep Old Bridge Preservation Society on track for the next fiscal year. Our sponsors were thrilled, and it was a win-win for all. Susan Parker runs a tight ship, and our committee was well informed of our responsibilities at the park. We had no issues with traffic, parking, rowdiness, or damage. Our committee even returned to the park after the event to pick up, as Susan calls, micro garbage. The town has created a set of rules and regulations for those, and those have been followed. This is a public park, the most beautiful park in our region, and a showcase to be proud of. An underutilized and deserted park is an attraction for undesirable activity. A thriving open space that hosts events throughout the year is an asset to our citizens and our business. Please continue to allow Old Bridge and other organizations to host their events at the town of Sunset Beach Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody has any intention of
any-
not allowing you to do
Any,
that.
sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason McMillan. Though my address is Ocean Isle Beach, for most of my professional and personal career, I'm geographically closer to Sunset Beach, much like the Ocean Isle Beach Post Office. I own Dixieland Kettle Corn Company along with my wife, and I certainly appreciate everyone here on the council coming out in public tonight saying that they are in favor of keeping the farmers market. I'm not here to figure out where the rumors came from. They came out to most of us in the last couple of weeks at the market. However, you are indicating that you're going to consider restructuring your fee rate for either for-profits or not-for-profit organizations that desire to use the park. I would like to offer this for you to think on between now and whenever this special session might come up, because I may not be able to come back and have a chance to speak. Whether it's a not-for-profit or a for-profit situation, nobody's in business to lose money. And either if it's a non-profit, they're going to have to recover those expenses through fees that they pass on to their participants. Or if it's a for-profit association, those fees will be passed on to the vendors. Since 1996, I have sold real estate in this very community. That was the year that I got my real estate license. Since 2001, I have been a general contractor, built and remodeled homes right here in this area. 8 years ago, I lost those businesses. This is how I have decided to reinvent myself. I'm not able to go out here and have a brick and mortar store, but I can participate in this particular farmers market. As such, I have found that many of our fellow vendors are in the same situation. It's not that they don't aspire to have storefronts, but they simply are not in a financial situation where they can do it. So that if you are considering fee increases, keep in mind that if you drastically increase them, those costs are going to get passed on to these vendors. We will have to increase our prices. You will alienate some of the same people that you attract to this area. And I have spoken with a number of people. I can take you to other markets and show you people that drive an hour and a half, 2 hours away to come to this market, that bring money to our community, spend money in our restaurants our taxes, our taxable infrastructures here, our restaurant taxes, anything like that. So I ask that you please keep that in mind as you move forward, and you give some consideration to any potential fees that you are considering increasing. I'm not saying that they may not be warranted. However, I do ask that you keep that in mind and try not to alienate the very people that we have been able to attract to your community and that we have had the pleasure of introducing Sunset Beach to. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ann.
Ann Bockelman, 404 3rd Street. Just a couple of things. I'm not going to talk about the market. I think that subject's been covered. But I would like to ask you to look at the rules in terms of what is really needed and to look at some data. This is something I have asked you about in the past. One of the things that I understand has been discussed is the usage of the park, that some people consider there is overusage of the park. If you want to get some numbers, then I suggest you just take the events that are scheduled or that have been held, write down the number of hours each event has been scheduled for, and then compare that to the total number of hours the park is open. So dusk to dawn, I think it is that right? And I think you'll see that the events are a fairly small percentage of big usage, event usage. Another thing that I understand was discussed, and I believe this was from you, Carol, about having a moratorium on using the park. I would ask you to please not do that. As a member of a nonprofit, and I'm also with the Old Bridge. I believe that you said a moratorium in one of the meetings previously, prior to this, Carol. You know, I'm also part of the Old Bridge, and when we plan our fundraising event, for example, Strawberry and Wine Fest, we plan it a year in advance. It takes us that long to make sure that we have the site secured, which we hope that we do. We put in our application right away after this year's event. We schedule a band, we start getting vendors, we start getting sponsors. So it would really be harmful to us if that if we were not able to proceed with that. We also are having in October on the 28th, all of you runners, we're having a small 5K. It's not as big and grand as what David and Jonna do, but it's going to be a fun, frightfully fun Halloween 5K. Sorry for that plug. But that's another event that we're planning. And if there was a moratorium, that would also hurt us. And the last thing I want to say is regarding the fee structure. I trust your judgment to come up with something that's reasonable, but I would like you to ask yourselves, what's the purpose of the fee in the park? Are we trying to subscribe from the fees, cover the budget, the whole budget for the park? Are we just looking at how much does it cost the town when somebody uses the park? What's the rationale behind a fee increase? And I'm not sure if it's really fair to say, well, a for-profit should have to pay more than a non-for-profit because the usage is the same. Maybe it's the number of people, maybe it's the number of hours. I don't know quite how you're going to do that, but I would just like you to look at the why of doing that. And finally, in terms of other rules, you know, sometimes we get carried away making rules. So let's try not to make this a solution in search of a problem.
Thank you. Other public comment? Mr. Nern?
Charlie Nern, 647 Oyster Bay Drive. Ann stole some of my thunder. I'm also concerned about limiting use of the park. The park belongs to every taxpayer in this town. Some of you have been around long enough to know that I always said we paid too much for the park, but when you look at the use it gets every day, I'm not sure that we did. I'm a member of the Committee to Honor America's Veterans and Sunset Vision, two great groups of people. And what I would like to see is some proof of this fake news. especially since it comes from somebody who has been guilty of spreading fake news so many times. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nerd. Other public comment? Ma'am?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council members. I am Susan Bradford at 416 Marlin Street, and I am here representing the waterfront markets, and I'm speaking in behalf of myself, Carol Corbett, Emily Shea, and Chris Wilson. And I want to address the fact that I know that people, for lack of a better way expressing it, are saying that you're going to get rid of the market. But in essence, if you look at the rules and the overuse and you decide to make a rule against commercial use, that can affect the market, and it can affect Race Sunset Beach, and it can affect anyone that wants to have an event there for whatever reason. And I agree with what several people said about parks are meant to be used, and if you look at the people that have held events at that park has never been abused. People love that park and they take care of that park, and for whatever reason that people are using that park, it is beautiful and it was meant to be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Ruth Reynolds. Can you hear me, Mr. Spada?
Yes.
Thank you. 703 North Shore Drive. And maybe I should say, I'm not here for the park to be done away with completely before I get programs thrown at me, agenda. I would like to say that because I consider these four ladies my friends, good neighbors, community socials, that always turn into a positive affair, and it really upsets me to have that we are here today discussing this. I agree with Ann Bachman and the other gentleman. Yes, the rules do need to be looked at, and if there was no loopholes in them, I don't think permits for an individual would have been allowed that is using it for financial gain. With that being said, I'd like to say that under the leadership of Gary Parker, we, the taxpayers of Sunset Beach, we purchased a loved piece of land for the park in order to preserve it from encroaching developments. I think we paid $2.1 million after all the perks we got, and that's been approximately 6+ years ago. My husband and I, as community residents, we feel we have lost our sense of ownership due to the fact that individual residents are allowed to use the park for personal financial gain. But then I hear, oh, well, everyone enjoys the park. That's why we continue to let it be allowed. But I can also, the market. But I can think of numerous reasons or events that could be held in the park that's non-profit that could be enjoyed by the whole community as well. I am for the market, but I think it all should go to a non-profit organization. Now, my question to the council members and Mr. Mayor, is there enough days during the peak season of annually that every resident and every taxpayer can have their day in the park? Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Hi, my name is Robert Donnelly. I live at 213 Planters Ridge Drive.
I'm one of the 200 people that sent emails out over the weekend. And I won't repeat what I said in the letter. It speaks for itself. After writing the letter, I got an idea in my head, and I said, well, I'm going to go down and talk to some of the businesses around the park, find out what they think. And I did. I talked to all the businesses except for one. One person was not available. Found their comments very interesting and intriguing. I won't repeat what they said. I think the council or somebody from the town ought to talk to those folks. I found it very interesting that most of the business members down there didn't even know that this issue was going to be discussed tonight. One person did. I think before you make any decisions, you need to do some homework. You know, don't work in a vacuum. Talk to the people that are infected. I did send a copy of that email out to people that I knew in Sunset Beach. Most of them live in Sea Trail. But I did get one comment back, negative comment back from an individual that lives right across from the park. I think those people ought to be talked to too and find out what their feelings are. I think, you know, one of the issues that was brought up to me was parking down there. Parking is an issue with any event. You walk out here tonight and walk across the street and you'll see you have a parking problem. People are parking to attend this meeting tonight over in commercial property. It's not an easy thing to resolve. But I think if the council, homeowners down there, and the rest of the town can come up with a working solution to maybe resolve some of the, you know, the comments that I've received. We're all here, you know, I believe the market is very beneficial to this community. And I hate to see it be done away with. I realize there's maintenance fees on the park and stuff like that, and people have commented on that. And fees should be charged to maybe recover some of that, I guess. But I am concerned if you raise the fees too much that you're going to shove vendors away and destroy the whole thing. I just ask that the council do its homework before it makes any decisions.
Thank you.
One last thing. I was down at the park last Thursday, and I ran into a couple of people that brought my attention to this issue. And I asked them who on the council was pushing this issue. And they didn't tell me what it was or who was doing it. So I don't know what's going on with this finger pointing up here, but it doesn't do anybody any good. I, for one, was not told you, Carol Scott, were pushing this issue, or that you, Rich Sobrato, was being pushed by this, pushing this issue by the council member you've identified tonight. I was the only one, one person. Okay?
Let's not respond.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other sir?
Good evening. My name is Terry Taragna, 915 Shoreline Drive. I actually work for Coastal Race Productions on their races, and in addition to, I wanted to mention their big financial impact on Sunset Beach, they also only use the park one morning a year. They do pay for cones through the town. They, you know, hire the police, they hire the EMTs, all advertising throughout for Sunset Beach. Now, throughout their races throughout the year, they also do donate to nonprofits, and I'm sure there are other people. So when you're trying to figure out fee structures and thinking that a nonprofit should pay less than a profit, that's totally a wrong way to go about it, because anyone can rent a hall, and maybe they're going to have a nonprofit evening or they're going to have a profit evening. It doesn't matter. So depending on what your fee structure is what you're going to bring people in. So keeping the fee structure as it is probably the best way for profits or nonprofits. So when you're looking at fee structures, think about for-profit companies also donating to charities in the town. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other public comments on the agenda?
Hi, I'm Dave Eastburn, 424 32nd Street, and I'm not going to talk about the market at all, other than the fact that I enjoy it and I like it and I'd like to see it continue. I've been thinking a lot about what Carol said earlier about wastewater management and starting to think about financing it. And I have one suggestion. We have some significant projects that we've already appropriated money for that will benefit a small portion of this community and that will not serve the entire community, and there are many people opposed to it. And I would suggest we consider reapportioning that money to wastewater management that will benefit the entire community. So we should take the 1.3 or 1.4, whatever the number is, that we've appropriated for the dredging project and reallocate it to wastewater management. Thank you.
Nothing has been appropriated for dredging. It would never be a town cost. I'm just saying, other than some preliminary things.
I take
It's been apportioned. I've used the wrong word.
Your comment too, you said wastewater. I assume you're talking about the stormwater. Yeah, okay. Any other public comment? Karen?
Karen Joseph, 915 Sandpiper Bay Drive. Some of us recall that the last time there were a lot of people here talking about the park. That was a few years ago. In regard to the discussion about the fees, I know that when it was initially mentioned from the dais, the number $250 was going to be discussed. It's my personal opinion that that number is a bit high. I do understand and recognize why you want to address the fees, but I would caution you, you don't want to outprice yourself. Regarding the rules, you just passed these rules. Please don't do with these rules what you've done with beach rules, that every 2 or 3 months you change something. See if they work for a year. Now, my other topic involves the park, but not this specific issue. I know that tonight you are scheduled to take action on the town park observation deck design and costs. As noted in Mr. Graham's memo to you, the original project called for an expenditure of $22,000 for a 120-foot walkway with a 10 by 20-foot observation deck. At a recent council meeting, 2 of you, in my opinion, essentially threatened the town administrator when you said, quote, "You better come back with a smaller project." Some of you have consistently and repeatedly voted against projects for the park. You've shown your negative attitude towards any expenditures for what has clearly become the center of this town. The comments you are hearing tonight prove that. You did it with the gazebo, and now you're doing it, you're threatening to do it again by voting against a project for this park. There is no reason on earth for you to reduce this project in size or cost. You are cutting the deck in half so that you can save $8,000 when this town, lucky for us, has an unassigned fund balance of more than $4 million. I ask you to stop undermining this valuable and wonderful asset. You have the opportunity to provide a wonderful amenity for the people who use that park on a daily basis. You have the opportunity to provide the best amenities whenever they're affordable. The original observation deck plan is affordable and appropriate. There is still money available through the part of grant, and just as you did with the gazebo, you will leave money behind that was given to this town. There's never any logic to walking away from grant money. Some of us worked very hard to get that grant. So I encourage you to not build this mini version of the observation deck and waterway. Thank you.
No, that's not what the rules say, Carol. All right,
I'll
thank
make a
you.
statement before an item.
Any other public comment? Okay. That would conclude the portion of public comments on the agenda.
Bob?
Susan?
May I recommend a 5-minute break? That'll allow people that wish to leave unless they want to stay for dredging and sidewalks. Or go to the restroom.
Okay. Okay.
5
we'll
minutes.
We'll reconvene at 8:20.
Karen.
Turn off.
No, I'm sorry. I have to say something that is just not true. They're not doing it. You know, Rich, that it's not true. There's no money. We spent all the money. Increase the budget to pay for things we said we're willing to do. So don't tell me we're leaving money as part of it. We're not leaving money. I don't know what you asked
I think I know the answer to my question. But I'm asking you. Yeah, mine's already.
They got all the other stuff. Yeah, I get that. What about the mark package? $25 each Thursday, or is it one day? So it's the best. They do. No average ballpark. $40
Yeah, but what you're not looking at is the sales tax revenue. Minimizing the cost, they provide speed, they pay for their services.
That's what I know.
Yeah, they provide their PP. They don't take you, I think you talked about what, Mark. They take trash, or whatever cars they bring they bring in containers. No, they have to take it back. They have trash cans out there because they're cemented into their ground. But they're rarely used. They're never full of cement.
I used to be able to go home and put it all behind me. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's very minimal. Yeah. If you think of it as like a concert, you know, it's you almost had your Monday off. I thought you were going to take your Monday off. Just had to hear all the stuff. Well, see you later. I'll probably be by your place. Are you working Thursday? Okay. Well, I know. I may have to give you some work. Those two ice cream sandwiches I bought, they ate them 3 bites. And it wasn't the same day that we had this water.
Say that. It's not something I've thought.
Excuse me.
I know I've been here before. You said, hey, you mind if I park here? And you said, sure, but I mean, because of me, as opposed to. Well, but I'm talking more about it because it's a later product. I mean, I always assumed it was.
I will address that when we get to the. Who? I didn't. What? But it's just people who listen to that and they believe it. That's the problem.
Were they coming from because her event area.
We did say that, Bob. That was before your time. Our rules provided, it may not be in written form, but we did say that orally. Huh? I said, I don't think the rules reflect that, but we did specifically state that. But I can do it in a different way. In a different way. I'm just agree. Do I sit here and play your signature? No. Am I here? No.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You can stop smirking anytime you want.
All right, I'm reconvening the June 26th, 2017 Sunset Beach Town Council meeting. The next item on the agenda is the Main Street Sidewalk Engineering presentation by Michael Norton and McGill Associates. And we appreciate your patience.
No problem. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you again. And
We were asked to provide an update on a progress report, if you will, on the Main Street Sidewalk project. So I wanted to stop by and give you a brief on that. We have a few slides in here which you've probably thumbed through and seen some of those. By no means is this an end-to-end from 40th Street all the way to the east end, but it gives you a snapshot of some of the plan sheet features that we have laid out. We do have the alignment laid out at this point, and that's some of what I wanted to describe to you, some of the things and characteristics of the sidewalk itself.
I want to point out, I can't read this with a magnifying glass.
No, and you wouldn't be able to read the detail that's on it. Yeah, some of the detail that's on it wouldn't be what I was trying to make you see from that was more or less just some alignment things that I wanted to describe to you. That's the only reason that is in there. It's just as a talking point. The alignment and similarly the reading from here will be, and Dustin, I guess it's must be from here. I think I'm having the same issue Mr. Warner was having earlier. Yes, I'm good. But again, these are merely talking points to give me something to describe to you. The details of these aren't really what I was going to go over tonight as much as give you an update of sort of an end-to-end. This is a depiction of a general overlay sheet that in essence just shows you end-to-end on the project. We have from 40th Street all the way to the east end, you have proposed sidewalk on the south side of Main Street.
Mike, how
yes, sir.
wide are the side?
5 foot.
Is the sidewalk?
5 foot width, 5 feet.
5 feet?
Yes, sir.
Now, is there any direct expense to the owners where the sidewalk is being constructed?
Currently, the sidewalk's proposed completely in the NCDOT right-of-way. We have offset into the right-of-way, trying to keep a couple of foot separation inside the right-of-way for a few reasons. One, to avoid some obstructions. There are utilities, there are pedestals, there are various things that we're trying to avoid as many of those as we can in particular, but it's completely inside of the DOT right-of-way. Yes, sir.
Would it be more convenient or would
Peter,
it be easier
microphone.
on you?
Take your mic.
Sorry, been in a car too long today. Would it be easier on you if you gave your presentation, or would you be more comfortable with questions in the middle?
I'm great either way. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, whatever works. And certainly if something's coming to mind, it may be good to go ahead and ask it.
On the money, the cost to owners, I think that Mr. Serrato was talking about. If we put the sidewalks in, we're going to have to move utilities and do things like that. Who pays if the utilities are on private land?
I'm unable to answer. Oh, on the private land.
On private land.
Yeah. The intent is not to disturb anything on private property. That's our goal in aligning this thing within the DOT right of way, is to avoid encroachment into the private properties. And that's another reason for offsetting it from those rights of way, those outer rights of way perimeter, is to limit the potential impact during construction as well, so that there's everything is intended to happen inside of the right of way.
This might help out. What's the approximate width of the right of way off of the pavement on the south? I realize the pavement may not be right in the middle, but
yeah,
an approximate average width on the south side of Main Street of the right of way that's not paved.
Dustin, I may need your help with this because it varies significantly. You have 30, but you have some jogs in it that affect. So it's not a linear right of way by any means.
I understand that, but it's not 5 feet.
No, sir. No. In essence, from the paved shoulder that's there now on the outside of the bike lane, you're generally going to have 15 feet or so in most cases.
Okay.
Are you planning to place the sidewalk at the edge of the property line?
No, ma'am. We're trying to stay inside a couple of feet approximately, so that we don't impact, and this gets back to the private property impact, particularly during construction, and for another reason. We have a lot of water meters that are immediately adjacent to those properties too. So we're trying to impact utilities as little as possible, And we do have some maneuvering and meandering of the bike path, but where the attempt obviously to save parallel parking spaces is a key goal too. And that's the reason we're trying to stay as far to the outside as you're suggesting as we can, because I mean, I park on the beach too. I realize that, and I value that parallel parking as well. Believe me, I was at 7th Street a couple of weeks ago.
Is it fair to say that this project will eliminate parking on the south side of the street?
Right now, it looks like, based on our initial alignment, there are up to half a dozen that could potentially be impacted. And I say potentially because part of that will depend on working with Brunswick Electric and ATMC to perhaps shift pedestals. If they have enough slack cable inside them, they could be shifted relatively easily or with little cost.
No, but this is just preliminary. And what would be the cost? Have you figured out a guesstimate so that we can? We have
spoken with them, both Brunswick Electric and ATMC, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. We feel like it's in the, the hundreds perhaps per lot. We don't, or per parking space. We don't know that. And I mentioned a half a dozen spaces.
Okay.
That's based on an alignment that we have shown where we're meandering around some of those fixed obstructions, and we may have a space that is in between two driveways. A lot of times on the property lines, you'll see those pedestals placed at the property corners. So in between some of your driveways, you're not going to have sufficient parking space between the driveways themselves, particularly if it's duplex units.
Right.
So we neck down in those areas immediately. You have some, obviously, no parking areas already that won't be impacted either in front of beach accesses or as you're approaching intersections. But we've narrowed it down to about half a dozen spaces, if you will, parallel spaces, roughly 20-foot length spaces. 22 is a typical parallel. 20-foot seems to work well if folks are paying attention. But I understand also there's a little bit of overlap that can be gained in single-family residential driveways. Perhaps there's some width in some of those that you don't have in the duplex situations.
Peter had his hand. Peter, you had a question?
Ready? Thank you. This is in the North Carolina DOT right-of-way.
Yes.
It's not the town property.
That's correct.
Am I correct?
Yes.
I thought I knew the answer to that question, but
yes.
I just wanted for the public to know. North Carolina DOT has a cross-section requirement for sidewalks. They've got a structural component, certain depth, aggregate base. What we're showing here is a 6-inch thick concrete sidewalk with a 6-inch number 67 stone subgrade underneath it. North Carolina DOT requires where there's a driveway and vehicular traffic will go over the sidewalk, there's a different cross-section than if it's just the pedestrian and foot traffic. It doesn't seem like we've taken that into consideration here, but I can also understand that it may be very difficult, if not impossible, to determine where such driveway accesses are and are not.
What we did was we had ECS group out of the Carolinas provide us initial geotechnical information and recommendations and specifications from their work based on the subsoil characteristics. Mm-hmm. They did provide us the cross sections that were intended for use. We described for them residential driveway use, which is that direct access to and from residential driveways that will be crossing the sidewalk regularly. The increments between those driveways, in essence, it's not negligible as a whole, but it's negligible when you consider the construction end to end of trying to set break points in between properties. So we had projected that the linear footage of the sidewalk would be, for all of those particular uses, would be based on, and we would recommend to DOT the specifications provided us by ECS, which was the 6-inch and minimum 6-inch base. Part of that depending on the storage requirements or needs to satisfy stormwater standards. We feel like 6 inches is sufficient right now. The other measures, such as the pier and some of the commercial areas, their specifications increased to an 8-inch thick sidewalk section with a similar base. So those are the
that's the current information we have from them that we were going to propose to DOT for consideration.
When you talk about the pier, you're talking about the parking lot entrance off and on Main Street that leads to the pier parking lot.
Yes, sir, and those areas that we understand from town will have either emergency vehicle or commercial vehicle traffic fairly routinely. We wanted to make sure those surfaces would accommodate those traffic loads that were typical for those areas.
As a follow-up question to that, it appeared to me when I looked at the full-size drawings of the sidewalk that the jogs in it were not for aesthetics, they're all for utility purposes.
They are, because the intent was to keep it as far outside as we could for the primary goal of saving as many parallel spaces, obviously, as we could along the street. So the other part of those jogs, though, they're not in 90-degree angles because we didn't want to promote the cross traffic that would, skip a sidewalk, so to speak, or walk around the corner. So they do meander around those obstructions for that reason, so they're not short-circuiting traffic by pedestrians. So we tried to make them, and in those drawings, and even in these, I was going to point them out where you see that curvature in those. That was the main thing I wanted to point out to you. You'll see curvature in a couple of those drawings. Some are straight lines, some have the curvature in them. But when you represent those at proper scale, they're really very subtle turns. They're not abrupt.
It looked like generally, almost universally, that there was 9 to 10 foot wide, I won't say what it's made of because it could be gravel, it could be grass, it could be whatever it is, between the outside of the existing asphalt bike lane and the northern edge of the proposed sidewalk. So it looked like, for the most part, a couple areas it narrowed down, but it was hard to scale it to really see.
It was, and anything under 9 foot we targeted as potential parking loss areas that we wanted to evaluate further to determine if perhaps the obstructions, the utility obstructions, whether it's economical to move those to save a certain amount of parking spaces. So that was intentional. The 9 foot width we set as a minimum standard for vehicular width, because that's a typical stall width anyway.
Did the DOT have any input into this engineering workup so far?
They have, with regarding the separation needs and requirements, some of their separation needs for the sidewalk and its proximity to edge of pavement. Yes, and Susan.
I dropped off the preliminary plans last week for review.
Carol.
I assume you said it will leave at least 9 feet for parking, and I think that's important. How much is there with the current sidewalk that's currently in place?
14.
14, so
it'd be 5 feet more than that.
No, because that's already 3 or 4 feet wide.
You're taking out the old sidewalk.
Yes.
The old sidewalk, the intent would be the old sidewalk be removed, yes.
Because it's impervious, and it's
Yeah.
4 feet, which is non-ADA
And
compliant.
it's in terrible shape.
That too.
Mike, it's fair to say that we need to know what to do next and what the next part of the process is?
The next part for us, in addition to look at those half a dozen spaces with Brunswick Electric, ATMC, is to try to gauge a cost impact for trying to shift those spaces, in other words, save those half a dozen spaces, if you will, to see if it's economically feasible to do so. And it may very well be.
What about the economic cost of the project?
Yes, we haven't done a detailed cost projection on the project.
Any guesstimate at all?
Preliminary cost estimates are in the 350 range, 350,000 range. Very, very preliminary numbers.
I will say up front, we spent $500,000 on widening the road, and I hate to spend, I know he's going to hate me for saying this, I would take that money. Everybody I've spoken to thinks that the road widening is sufficient at this point, and I take that money and I put it towards stormwater. But that's my personal opinion on this, so maybe they'll twist my arms.
All right, is there more, any? Susan.
I just want to remind the council that we did receive a $100,000 grant for this project to offset the cost.
And that all will affect, my vote.
Does anybody have any,
Not yet.
does any council have questions so far. And we forestalled your presentations unless you're
No,
finished.
well, these things, these questions are exactly in line with what
So-
was, and if
So
I
we
could-
were concerned about not having room for parking.
Yes.
As a public trust beach, again, this is my personal opinion, think we have an
Well,
obligation to
It's always
provide
been
parking.
it's always been a major public safety issue that we have to address.
And the cost for me is the second, major piece
Well-
of information.
We have sidewalks in the park, and we don't have sidewalks on Main Street.
All right, well, do we have any more questions? I mean, we've prevailed on him to wait for the others. Do anything else for him?
What's the next
Susan?
step?
He'll develop, what he's going to look into the utilities, the movement, the cost associated with that. Then we'll probably come back with a projected estimate of the project. And also, I do have large copies of this available if someone wants to stop in and take a look at it. These are small, but it's also engineering, so, but I do have bigger samples for you to review. So again, this is just an update, and we're going to proceed as directed to obtain those costs and come back again at another time.
Okay.
Does that need a motion?
No.
No.
No, that's just
Thank you.
reality. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Michael.
Next item on the agenda is the shoreline management pre-dredging analysis by Mr. Neal at Moffett and Nichols.
Mr. Neal, I would appreciate it if you could use your man's voice tonight.
Yes, sir. I will do my best. Is that work, or am I close enough? I appreciate the opportunity. This is what I want to do tonight. There's a recommendation before you in the form of a memo as far as moving forward with the Jinks Creek, the dredging analysis for Jinks Creek. So I wanted to give you sort of an update in support of that recommendation for the project itself, talk about that recommendation, how it came about, and then open up for discussion if there may be some at that point, or any questions all the way through the presentations work for me best. So with that, if I'll wave when the...
Can I have a question? I was at the scope meeting with you.
Yes, sir.
Why are we still speaking of Jinks Creek? Knowing what we went through a couple weeks ago with the scope meeting, knowing that no matter what we do, it doesn't seem like they're going to allow us to dredge Jinks Creek. Why don't we concentrate just on Turtle Creek, Mary Creek, and the canals that we've dredged already, and stop wasting people's money?
That's a town decision. I didn't necessarily, I mean, what what I envisioned as the town's process was to gather the information and evaluate it. At any time, I mean, I'm not sure that dealing with National Marine Fisheries and even Division of Marine Fisheries, the state and the feds, I think that they want to proceed in an environmentally conscious manner.
In your decision, though, if we do everything that they ask us to do you think they're going to allow us to dredge Jinks Creek?
Yes.
It's never been dredged. Primary nursery all around it, and you think after that scope meeting, the Army Corps of Engineers is going to allow us to dredge Jinks Creek?
Yes.
I'll tell you one thing,
Well,
I didn't get that meeting.
Well, you've had conversations following that meeting with the alphabet agencies.
I believe that, and where this whole, we're getting to the punchline of this whole thing, the purpose of the recommendation to do the shellfish survey for Jinks Creek is so that we can outline exactly what those impacts, if there are any, would be for actually dredging. We did a site visit out there, and we can maybe just throw this PowerPoint out and talk about that. But we did a site visit out there. We've had pictures, and the agencies have agreed to come out and meet with us and actually look at the resources. There are numerous resources on the side of Jinks Creek. We're not sure what's in the deeper water. We did, just as a random scoop, as we were traveling down around the S-curve in the upper portion of northern Jinks, or the the lower portion of northern Jinks Creek, so in the S-curve, just kind of scooped and pulled up a clam in the deepest part of the water. So we can expect that, I believe, as we do the survey, there will be some resources in that deeper portion. There may be significant resources in that deeper portion. Asked if we would be allowed to survey, to dredge Jinks Creek. I think, and this is in the presentation, I think it's going to come down to the purpose and need. And the agencies did ask for a purpose and need statement. Why are we dredging Jinks Creek? Why do we want to do it? And from my understanding, that is, it's not necessarily that, well, Jinks Creek is filling in. We know that. The rate of its filling in may not be as substantial as we would need it to be. But the purpose we're dredging Jinks Creek, my understanding, is because it's an option of going through Tubbs Inlet for navigation or through Jinks Creek. And the Jinks Creek provides the more acceptable alternative. If that's not true, then
well, let me ask a couple conceptual issues. As I read your memorandum, and as I think this is developed, and at least as I've come under, when you're talking about Jinks Creek, you're talking about basically from Riverside Drive north to the intercoastal.
Yes.
Just that. You're not talking south of, when you use the term Jinks Creek, you're not talking about south of Riverside Drive.
We can, I think in here, there's south of Riverside Drive. It is going out to the last dock within the city limits. Keep going. I think we had, that one.
Yeah.
One back. And that doesn't show it either. We go to, I believe it is,
My dock?
No, they
past your dock to the development down there.
But does it go past, does it go? Well, I thought it was in this,
No,
that,
in
the
we're still confused.
The sampling locations map in
Yes.
your report runs from, as I read it, runs from about Riverside, or actually almost where an extension of East North Shorewood, north to the intercoastal.
Correct. The sampling for the shellfish survey will not go beyond Riverside Drive.
Okay.
The dredging would go to the
Okay.
last dock within the limits of Sunset Beach.
Okay.
That's all the way out to Palm Cove.
It would not enter Palm Cove.
Because that's a lot, they're putting docks in there now as we speak.
They are not included in the project.
They were never included.
They were never included.
Right.
No.
Peter?
I asked the same question from the previous conversation. Thank you, Dustin. I'll ask the same question I asked of the previous presenter. Would you rather give your presentation and then have us ask questions, or you just kind of said something about throw it out the window and let's just have an open discussion?
It was going to an open discussion anyway, so I'm fine with questions, and we can just throw
let me follow up with Mark's point, because Mark and I were there with you and Susan at the scoping meeting.
And I'm lost because I don't know what to think. I'm getting different answers.
We'll all pay attention to each other then, and we'll learn. This is $93,000 for a shellfish survey in, I'll call it Upper Jinks Creek, from Riverside up out to the intercoastal waterway. If I say something wrong, because people are going to mark this down in blood, so correct me, please. If there are, and I know there's some dispute over how many people would find themselves within a dredging district, but the number 300 to 350 has been put out there. So we're talking about spending, in addition to what we spent already, we're talking about spending $265 of each one of those persons' money. Not that we're spending it, but they're paying for it because of a dredging district situation, formula.
It's 2/3 cost shareable by the state, so they're going to be paying 1/3.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And 2/3 is being paid for by the state in the form of a dredging grant of some sort. So that's right. So that gets it down to $75, $80 a person for this shellfish survey. I don't know that anybody up here on the dais would be against a shellfish survey, particularly with how much conversation has gone on regarding Jinks Creek and its and the sensitive nature of the primary nursery areas that surround Jinks Creek. But Mark made a statement that I'd like you to maybe give us some more background, that is the subsequent conversations that you've had with individual people from the alphabet soup agencies that were there at the scoping meeting. I got the impression, as did Mark, that there was resistance, I'll just use that word, from Corps of Engineers, other agencies, and some of it had to do with the public response and letters that they've received regarding Jinks Creek. And obviously, bureaucrats respond to that.
Yes.
I used to be a bureaucrat when I was little and decided I didn't want to be that anymore, so I quit. Early adult. Now, is it true that you've gotten, by talking to these agencies one-on-one, if you will, as opposed to having 6 of them in the group like we did before, where they were tag teaming, that you, in fact, feel better about Jinks Creek? Because that was your answer back to Mark.
Well, I believe that it would be allowable to dredge. Now, if we find significant impact, if we find significant resources within the dredge footprint, then there could be significant mitigation involved.
It also seems like the width of the dredging area has been revisited, or at least the suggestions that I was hearing, the undercurrents from particularly the Corps of Engineers, and maybe it was a different agency, but I'll say the Corps of Engineers, that instead of in some areas being 100-foot wide, that maybe we only need to be 60-foot wide. Has there been a rethinking of the footprint of the dredging in Jinks Creek to maybe satisfy some of the agency's concerns?
There has, and yes, and that was during the modeling of Jinks Creek. We constricted the width. Yes, there has been a change in the footprint. We are trying to minimize within those, I'll say, environmentally sensitive areas, in those areas of concern. We are 40 feet to 50 feet wide, and you know, that was done prior to that last meeting. But yes, we are shortening that. But I do, you know, in response to that question, I do want to be on the record that if there are significant resources, there could be mitigation.
What's that mean?
If we find a lot of oysters and clams within the dredge footprint, if we're going to be cutting those, if we're going to be dredging oysters which cannot move, we will either have to relocate them or mitigate in some fashion, which is always a price.
Now, another point too, Mark and I and Susan, both, as you did, both heard new terms being brought out at the scoping meeting that I never even knew existed, such as submerged, well, not submerged aquatic vegetation, we've talked about that, but there was various surveys regarding biological assessments and environmental assessments. It seemed like all of a sudden it was like, what? And now it seems like those assessments that you don't feel are going to be required.
No, they will be. We've gone in knowing that they would be required. Some of them, and
even initially, even 6 months ago.
Yeah, if we'll flip to the last slide. Just this was from the first coordination meeting. Excuse me, second last slide. One slide back. This is from the first coordination meeting last March, March of 2016. We had a list of items that we knew would be required, and this is and so the only item that is iffy at this point is the second item down, the BA, which is a biological assessment, could turn into a EA for environmental assessment.
What's the cost difference?
There's levels within that. It won't go down.
We know that. I want you to tell me the truth.
So
it's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
No, an EIS, an environmental impact statement, could increase to that level.
Take years to do.
Yes.
Mr. Neal, what does an impact P&A study, an environmental impact study cost?
Environmental impact statement, there's levels of that too. I mean, I can't give you a quote. It's not going to go down. We've had them. Oh, they do one for a typical growing, could be 200,000.
I read your letter several times, and so that I don't lose track of myself, I have to remind you, I'm concerned about dredging Jinks Creek. and I voted against the dredging analysis, the 220,000 dredging analysis. And the reason why I did, because I fear federal and state agencies frown upon dredging a tidal creek that has never been dredged. Generally. And we've already spent 220,000. We're going to spend another 93,000 and possibly another 500,000. I round up.
Well, that's total.
No,
That's
I
not- that's not-
understand. But my concern is I think this is going to turn into a money pit. And when do we cut it off? After the shellfish study? Or will the agencies, you need to also do B, C, and D?
Right.
They're going to make this extremely difficult. I know they are. I've received the phone calls, I've talked to environmental groups, I know the number of letters they received. I'm not saying this in a vacuum, okay? And I had intentions tonight, and I still will do it. I am going to file a motion that we remove, based on your map, Jinks Creek from the Shoreline Management Program. And my hope is to focus it on the areas that have never been dredged.
Mayor, can we finish the discussion at hand and then use the council's prerogative to vote one way or the other?
I had a question in that regard. I mean, I don't have any difficulty to do that, and we'll certainly give you the opportunity to make that motion. Is the relationship of the areas outside of Jinks Creek. I'm not talking about Marys and Turtles. I'm talking about the canal area and the bay area. The dredging of those, which seems to be more possible than Jinks Creek. The relationship between that and Jinks Creek, in other words, if we didn't dredge Jinks Creek, does it need to be dredged to make the dredging of those other areas effective?
That's a good question. And
At low tide, yes. Well, in my opinion. Now, you'd have to talk to the users. I know at low tide, we were out there, and, you know, I don't boat in Jinks Creek, so I don't want to speak for or against it. I've been out there once or twice, but at low tide, the boaters were coming through on plane, and we were in a small boat, and they weren't slowing down. And they were on plane, in my opinion, because they couldn't go off plane because it'd get stuck. So they were, you know, they were flying by.
Well, my question is if the canals and the back bay area and the feeder canal were dredged, and Jinks wasn't,
south of.
There wasn't dredged anywhere, because we're just talking about south with regard to the
Right.
shellfish study, but they're going to be dredged from Palm Cove to the. I mean, ultimately the proposal would be to dredge it from Palm Cove to the intercoastal. If that doesn't happen, I mean, have we just spent money unnecessarily in dredging the canals?
No, I wouldn't say unnecessarily. I mean, obviously, with that, you know, my understanding was the whole purpose was to provide that sustained connection to open water.
But they would still, I mean, they would still have that.
Yeah, I'm getting conflicting.
No.
Well, I'm getting conflicting. I speak to a lot of boaters, and I'm getting conflicting answers. Half the people tell me Jinks Creek is really filling in and it's got to be dredged, and the other half are saying it's fine.
Within
Doesn't
a
need to
couple
be
of hours of high tide, there is ample water in North Jinks Creek to get out to the intercoastal waterway from
So-
the fish streets.
But my point is, I'm
But
wondering.
you
and I-
have to schedule your boating trip within a couple of hours of high tide. Otherwise,
I
it's exactly
understand
what
that.
he's saying, you have to plane your boat, meaning you gotta go like hell to keep it up on the water so that your draft is limited.
I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be better off at this point limiting the dredging program, and I've been speaking to a lot of people. In fact, that meeting I went to with the Beach
Carol, speak up a
Consortium.
little
I'm
louder.
sorry, that beach, it's not called the Beach Consortium, Beach Renourishment Group. had a chance to talk to some people there who were also suggesting that we might be well advised to split, to not do the whole project, to eliminate South Jinks Creek.
North Jinks Creek.
North Jinks Creek.
North Jinks Creek, okay.
Don't touch the curves.
And what I'm asking you is, I said, because I've gotten conflicting answers on whether or not North Jinks Creek needs to be dredged, I'm trying to get that determined. If it doesn't need to be dredged, we'd be much better off at this point dredging the finger canals, the feeder canal, trying to get approval for Canal Drive and that little bit of Jinks Creek to get them out to the part of Jinks Creek they need to get to the intercoastal.
Well, one thing I think is for certain is if you dredge the finger canals, they'll look better because there'll be more water in them. You'll be taking aquatic soils out of there, and there'll be water instead. So even at right now at low tide, it's a lot of them is mud flats.
Robert,
it will look better.
Robert, I have a question. If we started the project now just to do what we've dredged in the past, what's the process? How long would it take us to get permits? Because I know that some people want to know that. How long would it take to get permits now? Jinks Creek completely out of the scenario. Yeah. Just to do what we've done in the past, Mary Creeks in Turtle Creek and Finger Canals. Could we have that done by the spring of next year?
Wait, before you answer that question, Mark, you're talking about there's been dredging that's been not permitted dredging. You're talking about permitted dredging.
Yeah,
in the past.
Well, let me just tell you about Jinks Creek's never been dredged in the eyes of the state of North Carolina.
Well, because they didn't have any permits.
So that's the null and void. They didn't even want to talk about that when we brought that up. Well, if we just wanted to go forward and do the canals and other areas, it's been dredged already. When could we start dredging that to get this project going? It's been going forever, it seems like.
No, it could be dredged this fall. This
fall.
But canal's never been dredged.
No, only the areas that have existing permits, although they may be expired. Only the areas that we have. So the Bay Area would not be included.
But real quick, if you wanted to put Jinks Creek in that, what's the process? Is that going to be this fall?
Possibly next year.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we'd have to file a separate permit.
Yeah, well, in that scoping meeting, the guy made it very clear to Army Corps of Engineers, Pete, I think I'm right, said, why are we combining both? Why can't we go two different areas? Go for the areas that's been dredged already and separately look into Jinks Creek if the homeowners of these properties want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, to me, the way to go. Therefore, you could help the people that want to get their canals dredged and have it done this fall. And if something good happens in 6-7 months and the people, like I'm just telling you up front, to go forward on Jinks Creek, the only way I do it if the 350 people agree on doing it, and a survey has to go out. I'm not spending any more money into, I know they want to pay for it.
And that's kind of the whole recommendation is boiled around, again, gathering the information, just going in that stepwise process that the town kind of, as I understood, the town wanted to proceed in. So we get that information for the survey of Jinks Creek, the shellfish survey. I realize it's a lot of money, and I tried to bring it down personally. I didn't get it to where I wanted it at, but regardless of that, it's still a lot of money. My recommendation was to proceed with that, get the information, and then make the decision on how to move forward. We could still complete Mary's and Turtles Creek, as well as any area that we have existing permits. I believe doing the shellfish survey.
And that includes Riverside as well?
The feeder canal, the finger canals, Terrace and Myrtles Creek, not the Bay Area.
Doesn't
Not the
include,
bay, not
it
the
doesn't
canal.
include
Right.
canal, and that's a whole lot of houses
The canal,
on
yeah,
there.
the feeder canal.
No, there's canal and then there's the feeder canal.
Oh.
In the event that we,
Canal
You're on.
Street.
It's on. It's on.
in the event that we cancel or terminate the effort to dredge Jinks Creek, what citizens call North Jinks Creek, what's illustrated in your map. We spent $220,000 for a dredge analysis. Does the town have to pay that back?
No.
We just have to pay the $70,000, a third.
No. There's nothing paid back. You just changed the scope.
We don't have to pay back anything?
No.
Wait a minute.
Who pays for it?
Pay back, I'm assuming you're saying pay back the grant. Is that correct? You're talking about paying back the grant to the state?
I understood that the grant was 2/3.
Yes.
That's a good, you're answering my question. Thank you.
Is that what, I guess,
You're screwing me up.
Sorry.
who are we paying back?
The grant is, the town pays 1/3, the state pays 2/3. Now, we spent $220,000 to do a dredging analysis on Jinks Creek. So I'm assuming the Sunset Beach taxpayers paid 70.
Okay.
Is that a fair assumption?
It
So-
wasn't just for Jinks Creek, though, Rich. It was for everything. It was
Pardon
for,
me?
it was for everything. It
And
wasn't
that-
just for Jinks Creek.
And that
It was for the
money will
entire dredging
eventually be
project.
assessed to the
Well,
people
The dredging
affected.
was for the,
What council has approved so far is a pre-dredging analysis and shoreline management, including the entire dredging district, the entire dredging area. Myrtles Creek,
Mr.
Turtles
Neal,
Creek, Mary's Creek, the
dredging-
Riverside Bay,
yeah.
Jinks.
So the dredging analysis includes Mary's Creek, Turtles Creek,
Yes.
the canals, and Jinks Creek?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, here's something, Rich, here's something else to think about, too. The cost that we've been looking at so far is hypothetical, based upon the, one of the biggest nuts we've got to overcome financially is the cost of disposal of the dredge spoils. And the cost of disposing good beach sand that can be transported to another entity for use, you don't have to pay a tipping fee on that. And that tipping fee is probably as much as it costs to dredge it in the first place.
Well-
If we, and we just need to know this, the numbers that we've been given so far, we can't just pluck Jinks Creek out of it and assume that the costs are going to be uniform, because they're not. Because the best material is coming potentially out of those areas that could be reused and resold to other places like Ocean Isle Beach.
Well,
So I'm just trying to make that,
understand
because you're
that.
asking some
And
financial
then- and then
questions. Those are all important.
Another question I have is, let's assume there's, let's say that there's unintended consequences, and we have erosion at Palm Cove and the west end of Ocean Isle. Is the town liable?
I don't know if you're in a,
I
Mr.
guess
Neal
you're
can
not talking about
answer
a
that.
hurricane.
No, I don't want you to be an
Yeah.
expert. Yeah, I don't
Yes,
expect
you do.
anybody
You're
to be
paying
an
the money.
expert. But these are concerns that I have.
I've never, I don't know.
Now, if we do get permitted to dredge Jinks Creek, and it's, somebody files a lawsuit, the SCLC or Coastal Federation, and says, we're challenging this, who pays the legal fees?
Rich, that's really not a fair question. He's neither an
I
attorney.
mean, there's so many unknowns here. I'm getting anxiety.
Well, if the
'cause you're
permit was
against
issued, then the challenge would be during the permit process. And so it wouldn't necessarily be in a court of law. My understanding would be resolved within
The agencies.
the agencies. So
Well, my overall concern about it is if the subject of the memo for tonight was the $92,000 and the ancillary costs associated with the shellfish study, I think that a lot of the questions go to the ultimate concept about where we're going with this and what we're going to do. But my initial question is, if we spend, and based on your response to one of Councilman Benton's questions was, there could be additional requirements. Are we spending $92,000 plus? We don't know that that's the end of the line.
no, we don't. We asked if there was, at the first agency coordination meeting, we listened to what the agencies gave us. We went out and did it at this coordination meeting. Because they came back now with new requirements after not giving them the first time, we specifically asked, okay, what about this? Everything we could think of, like the SAV survey, and they said this was it. But no, there could be additional. There absolutely.
When are
could be
they going to
additional.
do that?
Mayor, one of the things, too, that Bob has highlighted in his report is that the stakeholders, do you call them stakeholders, the agencies?
Yes.
The agencies would be more participatory in looking at the shellfish survey and coming out and putting their boots on the ground.
Yes.
Which I thought, that impressed me. Now, I'm still concerned that there could be other things.
Well, I'm dismayed because going back to last October, when I really first became involved in all the intricacies here, it was my understanding that that was what was going to take place last year, that there was going to be the scoping meetings, that the agencies would say we want A, B, C, and D, and we would comply with A, B, C, and D, and we would know where we're going. And we're sitting here now, 6 months later, more than 6 months later, and we don't know where we're going.
Correct. The first scope, yes, correct.
I think what they're doing, Mr. Mayor, is trying to discourage us from proceeding, and this is the way how government sometimes operates.
I think that's a little bit overstated. We had the first scoping meeting a long time ago. I don't know when that was. And then you just had the second scoping meeting. One of the reasons the second scoping meeting was delayed so long was to accomplish all the things that you needed to accomplish in terms of surveys and other studies to be able to go to the second scoping meeting, present the issues, and then get the next stage of guidance, which you just got.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And so out of that, you've come back and said, they've identified the shellfish study that needs to be done as one of the main steps to go for your third scoping meeting, at which time the permitting process will be starting the discussion.
Well,
am I reading that correctly?
That is the intent, yes.
Okay.
See, John, the part that makes me a little suspicious, because they should have requested the shellfish analysis at the first scoping meeting.
Well, we can't fix what they should have done
Hey,
in the past.
they're the
We
scientists.
identified that. The ERC identified that. That got presented
right.
to Nichols, Moffett and Nichols, and
they
then it got
added-
presented at the scoping meeting,
Yeah,
the way the
it's-
process was supposed to be.
Robert, how long, if you
what's
do
the
all
next
these
add-on?
4 steps here, how long would it take to do it?
To get the permit filed for the
Right.
turtles
First,
and
you'd have to do all these 4 things to get a permit filed, correct?
right.
He's talking about the Jinx survey before the third scoping meeting.
Oh,
Right.
for the Jinx. Oh, for
How
Jinx
long will
Creek.
that take?
Oh, okay. We would look to
In the report,
September.
Yeah, in the
We would be
report,
the third
in the
agency.
report you said it's September.
Yes.
Yeah.
So John, he said the third scoping meeting would be in September?
That would be
I read it.
following this shellfish survey that needs to be done.
What are the negatives of bifurcating the application?
And it may be, that was definitely a possibility. There's no, in my opinion, there's a positive or negative in doing that until there's no positive or negative to doing that until we get the shellfish survey results
What you're
back.
telling me is we shouldn't make that decision until we get the shellfish survey.
Unless we're going to take Jinx Creek completely out,
What are the
No.
negatives of taking North Jinx Creek out?
it's just simply not dredged.
What are the negatives of that? I mean, as I said, I'm getting conflicting information whether it needs it or not.
Right. At low tide, navigation is, for some of the fishing vessels going through there.
See, I see them
eyewitnesses, it's
speeding
difficult.
up at all times. There's more water there than is
They're
in the
speeding
rest
up
of our
because they
areas.
need the plane and they have to go fast to get the motor out of the water, to get the boat to go flat so they can run fast over the low waters, shallow waters. They can't put their engine down
Is that
into
why
the
they
water.
keep racing past my dock?
That's part of the reason.
Let me ask one other question too, of Bob. At the second scoping meeting that Mark and I, you, Susan were at, all of a sudden they started talking about, and I'm going to read from your thing here, did they start talking about an individual permit?
Yes.
Versus a general permit? And they were isolating that, it seemed, to Jinx Creek versus the other areas that had already been dredged. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I assumed is they looked at it because one had been dredged before and one hadn't, that they needed to look at them separately, and they were sort of advising that we separate them from a permitting standpoint.
Yes, if there are significant environmental impacts, if there's a lot of shellfish, oysters, and clams in Jinx Creek that we will be dredging, yes, they will require us to do an individual
But
permit for
if
Jinx
the
Creek.
shellfish that is found is minimal, then you would assume, we would assume that a general permit would then work for Jinks Creek, or North Jinks Creek, because that's the only place we're doing the shellfish survey.
Yes, yeah, and that's why we will know that information. We will know actually at the site meeting. I hope to get that information.
All right, there was also, and I don't know if Mark picked up on this, but I did at the scoping meeting, where they were talking about the limits of the shellfish survey in North Jinks Creek would need to go from bank to bank, grass to grass, as opposed to just within the area of the footprint of dredging. Can you rationale that? Why would they go outside of the area that we're even contemplating dredging?
At post-construction, they will require some monitoring to see if we've impacted those shellfish.
Okay, monitoring.
So it'll be shellfish. It'll be more surveys.
The bottom line is, from what I understand, the position we're in, and from what you said, if I understand it correctly, is we have to make a decision whether we're going to commit to spend this $92,000 before we know specifically whether it's advantageous to divorce Jinks Creek from the other.
If we decided that this year we wanted to dredge as much as we could, much as already has been permitted, we could go ahead and divorce them and start two separate paths.
But for us, our decision is, do we want to commit to this $92,000 shellfish study and the other costs associated with it, which is probably another $9,000. Do we want to do that? And if I understand what you say is, you'll know that when you get after you spent the $92,000.
Yes.
Susan has.
I just want to remind, we've already submitted for reimbursement on the prior expenditures. So when you think about 92,000 or 93,000, you think of it more like 30,000 because it's 1/3.
Well, whether it's 30 or
I'm just
3,000,
reminding.
I don't want to spend money unnecessarily.
No, I'm just reminding you that that's 1/3 of reimbursable.
I have a question in the report here. We've been talking about what was previously dredged. In your second paragraph of the June 21 report, you said, based on the comments received from the permitting agencies, the areas of work outside of Jinks Creek should move forward without the need for additional field studies. The remaining areas include Marys and Turtles Creek, the Bay area, and the feeder canal, along with the finger canals A through D. Bay area is, in your previous work, has included the Canal Drive area where I live and the Bay portion. Now, in the discussion that's happened in the past, the Canal Drive and Bay area, any dredging that's considered to have been done there would not have been permitted, since most of the land from 13th Street on is filled, that was done from pulling it out of the water, making the bay and then creating some land for it. So I mean, just to be clear, from this statement, it sounds like if we divided the project into Jinks Creek and the rest of it, it would include Canal Drive and the Bay area. Is that actually correct?
Yes.
Or
it could. Well, I mean, if we want to dredge the Bay area this year, we can divide it out into a separate permit. I'm just not sure that we can get the permit by November 16th in order to start dredging this year.
Bob, I understand the Bay area was previously dredged, is that correct?
I'm not saying the Bay area was previously dredged.
not permitted.
Not permitted, yeah.
We haven't been able to establish that it was permitted.
Okay, can I interrupt here for a second? We have, it's a long agenda, plus we have the department reports. We've all received the department reports. They've all been in the packet as part of the on the internet. And the staff has been sitting here patiently for 3 hours. Can we waive their formal reports and rely on
we don't, yeah.
what's been submitted as part of the package?
Except for Dustin, we need him to work the board.
And we need Hiram.
Yeah, well, we need him for the
We can still waive the reports.
Yes.
Yeah, but we can let the chief and Bonnie.
Even Bonnie has stuff on there, but I don't think it's going to be
Yeah, I saw the
material.
new chief falling asleep.
Is there anything that would prevent us from splitting the project and going in now for the feeder canals, the finger canals, the Bay Area, whatever, everything except North Jinks Creek? And what would stop us 2 years from now saying, okay, and at that point, doing a survey of everybody, because they would all be part of that, since all of those areas would be using Jinks Creek, they would be part of that whole thing. Just postponing that for a couple of years, find out how people, what people want, see what's happening in terms of filling in.
We cannot expect the cost to be the same as it was originally purported to us in the estimate, because we're taking some of the best dredge material out of the formula, which was a moneymaker for the project.
It's less an issue of the money that's going to be saved on that sand. It's still going to cost money. You know, you're just not going to get 100% of that back.
True.
For me, it's more of an issue of at least proceeding apace with what we think we can do and postponing an inevitable decision on the part at this point that we don't know if we can.
But then the new argument,
and depending on who you speak to, some people say we're never going to be able to do it, and some people say, yes, we can, and I don't know.
Let me say something. Sure. Then the new argument becomes, is it worthwhile to do everything else but Jinks Creek and not do particularly North Jinks Creek?
As I said, I'm getting conflicting information on North Jinks Creek
Well,
and whether it needs
get out
to be
there in a
done
boat
now.
and you'll see. If I'd have a hard time, I'd have a hard time paying for a dredging district that didn't let me go anywhere. It just
So
made my
your opinion is it
backyard
needs
look
a-
better.
There's a
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
a
I am getting that, I'm getting,
there's a modification to what you said, I think. And that modification would be, you take both of them, and you take Jinks Creek as A, and you take everything else as B, and we start B as we go through the permitting process to what can be done. And meanwhile, we continue the surveys and the other things for Jinks Creek.
and do a survey.
You continue that process going so we don't lose the momentum from there. And if it takes an extra year to resolve Jinks Creek, we still have the other part of the project underway. And we are going through step by step, finishing up
I
all
think
the
we need to
surveys and
split-
things that need to be done. So splitting them doesn't mean postponing them. Splitting them means working them at the different rates that those things can proceed.
You know, we need to make a decision on Jinks Creek, and kicking this can down the road like we always do, it's not gonna happen.
I'm not
We
saying
gotta
kick
deal
it,
with it.
I'm not saying kick it down the road, I'm saying continue the process that we have going. But you can take and you can separate the two stages of the process. One of them will move very fast because we can go straight into the process to get permits by November to have these things.
Maybe.
Maybe,
Depends
I
on
mean,
what
you,
you're-
that's, all of this is a maybe. While the Jinks Creek continues to go forward, and if the
Well,
results
that's
turn
what I'm
out properly.
saying. Why should Jinks Creek go forward? What are we doing?
If there's no access to get out to a major waterway, then you're dredging for naught, for any of these areas. And, you know, we've talked about the financial impact on the town. And this is not an issue of people's property values increasing because of dredging. Number one, it's costing them money. It's, what we're trying to do is prevent these property values from decreasing in value. If they decrease in value, who is it that you came up with a statistic saying it was 27% or something of the property base?
Excess value.
The bottom line is, we better do everything in our power not to adversely impact the entire Sunset Beach community. And what that means, and this is why we asked for legislation to allow us to establish dredging districts and make it a mandatory thing and not a voluntary thing, so that you can't, you know, you couldn't have people holding out saying, oh, I don't want to spend the money, but their property values go down. That affects everybody. My understanding is we've lost a bunch of sales because people have no confidence that their area will be dredged. And they've gone to Ocean Isle, which has a dredging program, and canals that are routinely dredged, and that's where they're buying when they have a boat. And they're not coming to Sunset Beach. We better be darn careful to make sure that doesn't happen.
Carol, for years, the people who lived on the canals signed a petition like you would for a road, and if they got 50% or more, went to the town, and the town dredged the canals, and the owners reimbursed them. Now, I have to find out if part of the legislature, can the town mandate these people now to dredge?
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes.
Yes, they can.
And that's the
The answer is
whole
yes.
reason why we went in for that. That was the reason we asked for that legislation.
You know, that's why we should have surveyed these
Karen, please
residents
stop it.
to
Bill.
find out.
But you're interrupting people talking, that's rude. If you don't like it, you can leave.
Hey,
I
come on.
came in here thinking,
Rude.
I like your point, John. I think we need to split it. But I came in here thinking we ought to just forget Jinx Creek. I'm hearing a different story tonight. That we shouldn't forget it, and it will cost us $30,000 or something to do the shellfish survey. And maybe we should do that, but if it comes back when there are more hiccups and we're really getting negative feedback, we just stop. I mean, we've got to stop at some point if this isn't going to happen.
No, I believe
If
after-
it doesn't make any sense, if it's going to be environmentally harmful, we've got to be able to stop it.
Let's hear Bob, what he thinks of that.
No, I mean, once the shellfish survey is in, the results are in, and it is $92,000, but once those results are in, we should be able to, regardless of the additional tasks they throw on us, we will know a cost. I mean,
So I've been on the fence about this, and that's convinced me that, okay, we'll do another $32,000. But if we get to a point where it's not going to happen, and people really are up in arms, and this is where I would agree with you, we do survey all of the property owners on Jinx Creek, depending on what the cost is. At that point, that may be so prohibitively expensive. Maybe we should do a survey at that point. I don't know.
Well,
Our decision tonight is whether or not we spend the $92,000 for the shellfish survey, and of which we pay 1/3.
Are you
Well,
making a motion?
Carol, let me kind of add to that too. So people don't think, and I've heard from the dais here, people make accusations that why aren't we surveying people? Until this got done, we had nothing to survey.
You're right.
We didn't know if it was dollars or donuts. And to go out and survey people, hey, do you want dredging or no, you don't? Well, how much is it going to cost? I don't know. Where are you going to dredge? I don't know. We have to be responsible, and we have to put a program out there so people can then have a chance to say, yeah, I like that, or no, I don't. The people that are directly involved.
Well, the subject isn't a survey. The subject is the council's decision.
I'd like to make
for
a
the
motion to
shellfish
vote on
study.
this, Bob.
Oh, your motion to spend the money?
Make the motion.
All right, there's a motion to spend the money for the shellfish study in accordance with the report from, and the recommendation from Mr. Neal.
Time out. Susan?
I have a point of clarification. Did you also wish him to proceed with the permitting of the other 4 bodies of water?
Oh, yes. Oh, well, I think so. Yeah.
Well, that's what needs to be.
Separate?
Huh?
Make a motion.
No, it would be part of the same motion.
I want that split up.
The motion, you want to split up?
It's just 2 sentences.
No, the idea is we approve the survey, the shellfish survey,
yeah.
yes. And in conjunction with that, we give Bob the authorization to proceed with 2 lines of approach, one being all the other areas besides Jinx Creek, start the permitting process for that. While we, yeah, so that's what.
I don't want to vote for Jinx Creek, but I want to vote for the other districts to be dredged.
It's fine to do 2 motions, just
Yeah.
split it up.
All right,
Let's-
then, John, I won't
No
vote for
problem.
the other.
All right, all
Let
right.
me have a clarification also from Bob, because Jinx Creek is confusing, because there's a north and south Jinx Creek, not by Bob's definition, but by, I'll call it consensus. And we all know what we mean by north and south. The only place there's a oyster survey is in North Jinx Creek, as shown on the map. South Jinx Creek, which is out more towards Carroll and towards Tubbs Inlet, although we're not going anywhere near Tubbs Inlet, so don't think we are.
The Bay Area.
But it's the Bay Area and then hooking around by Palm Cove. that you'd proceed with that as well. So the only thing you wouldn't proceed with
it's
is
short
where
of
the
Palm
oyster
Coast.
survey is shown on your map,
wait,
which
let's-
ends at Riverside.
Let's keep this clean. It's Mark's motion. What is your motion, Mark?
My motion is you vote on two things: dredging of Jings Creek and dredging of the 5 other areas.
We're not
Define
voting,
James Creek
we're
then.
not, well,
No,
we're-
okay,
we're-
I'm
we're
gonna
not-
make a motion.
We're not voting
Wait.
on dredging,
Alright,
we're
there's a
voting
motion.
on
Voting
the survey.
The survey.
The survey.
There's no motion right now.
Yes, there is. He made a motion. There's a motion on the floor to proceed with the 5, I asked for clarification for the 5 areas.
The 5 areas.
And proceed separately with Jinx,
With the survey.
The s-
Do it,
the-
All
the
right,
shellfish
so which
survey.
one do you want to do first, Mark?
shellfish.
all right?
Study on Jings Creek.
The motion that's on the floor.
Forgive me.
The motion that's on the floor is to proceed with the shellfish survey and have him proceed with the agency, what's necessary with the agencies to set up the 3rd scoping meeting in September. That's the motion that we're going to vote on.
That's 2 motions.
Two motions.
That's 2 motions.
Two motions. The second
Motion
motion,
number
Rich,
1 is a survey.
is just to go forward with permitting what's been permitted already.
So why don't you make that motion
Okay.
first?
The first motion is to conduct the survey, the shellfish survey, period. The second motion will
Is to
be
support the
to
project.
proceed with the 4 areas not included in Jinks Creek to move forward with permitting.
I asked, I don't want to get involved in semantics here. I asked Mark what his motion was. He says he's got 2 motions. One is to proceed with the shellfish survey, and one is to, and the second one is to do the permitted areas.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now that's his motion.
That's what I said.
Well, be careful about that second one, because it's not necessarily just the permitted areas.
That you're going to have to
All right,
vote on.
I'll make a motion
That's
on the
his
second
motion.
one.
That's his motion.
His motion right now is on the shellfish survey.
That's it.
Do we want to spend $92,000 for a shellfish survey? Take a vote. And I'll make
You
another
satisfied with
motion
that?
after that.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Wait.
What's the motion, Bob, on this one?
To spend the money that Mr. Neal put forth in his,
You mean spending $93,000 for
Yeah.
shellfish study?
Yes.
No.
okay. The ayes have it.
I move that we
Well, I get the second
instruct,
That's it?
I got the second motion on going forward with the 4 other locations.
You got to define the marker. I can't vote on your motion. I don't know what
me too.
Turtle Creek,
geographic
Marion
foot,
Creek,
yeah,
Riverside Drive,
Bay Area,
Bay Area,
South Jinks Creek.
the South, no dredging Jings Creek at all.
No,
You can't get from the canal area to the
Carol, Well,
intercoastal.
certainly can. It's high tide.
Can I clarify here?
Go ahead.
That
I'll vote no on that
in
one.
what I pointed out before,
by your mouth.
that Robert clarified, is that there is Jinks Creek and then there's the area outside Jinks Creek. Jinks Creek is what we've been calling the North Jinks Creek. And the other areas
South Jinx.
are, well, it comes into that, but it's Mary's and Turtle Creek,
Oh, all right.
the Bay Area, the feeder canal along the finger canals and the finger canals.
Bob, can you explain this on the map?
That's Jinks Creek.
That's
and it's-
Jinks
and
Creek.
And it's everything else, the other 4 areas are all the other stuff down there.
So
Everything
what's
else.
all, I mean, what's this? That's been dredged before. This has been dredged before. In front of Carol's house has been dredged before.
Okay, well,
There's no permit for that.
so what's your problem?
Rich,
What we're
it's-
saying is to go ahead and proceed with the permitting process for those areas. Not proceed with the permitting of Jinks Creek.
North Jinks Creek.
They call it Jinks Creek here, but we call it North Jinks Creek.
The portion of Jinx Creek north of Riverside.
Yeah.
Folks, Bob gave us a map that's right in front of us. That is the area of the shellfish survey.
Yeah.
We just voted to do the shellfish survey, so what we in fact did is we separated that from the rest of the formula, the rest of the geographic footprint. So the next motion is dealing with everything other than the North Jinks Creek shellfish survey footprint.
I agree, okay.
Yes.
Because the Corps of Engineers has even said that there ain't no shellfish in South Jinks Creek.
That's
They
correct.
said it at the meeting.
That's correct.
All right, so who's making this motion?
Well, Mark had made the second motion.
Made the motion.
But I don't, but your motion wording is, I'm not voting for it.
Well, he's got a right to have you vote on, you vote
Okay.
against it.
Yeah, it's to do exactly what Pete just said.
All right,
That
I just
includes-
outlined it.
That
okay?
includes.
Yeah, that is it.
That includes the Bay Area, which you.
That's
you
fine, I
said.
have no
Okay.
problem with Bay Area.
And that little piece.
You're the one that has to proceed.
But, you know, again, John, you said it's never been permitted, so we're
Well-
gonna ask, we don't know it's gonna be
Right.
dredged or
Yeah,
not.
we don't know what's
So-
gonna happen.
But the Corps has already said that there is no shellfish there. That is not an issue. That was clear to
I
me.
think we're all in agreement
Yeah.
that we want to split the project into two pieces. One pieces is
The shellfish
from Riverside
survey.
Drive out to the
We already voted
intercoastal,
on
the
that.
northern thing.
Yeah.
Everything else
I just wanna
is in the
start the
second part.
process
Yeah.
on what's been dredged.
Okay,
Yeah.
Simple.
So,
well,
You gotta be
that's
careful how
not
you
that
say it.
simple, and you can't use that
I
language.
can't vote on what you just said.
you're using the wrong terms,
Help me
if you
out
will.
there.
Would you withdraw
we-
your motion and
No,
let me make a
listen to-
motion?
The,
He just
the
said what
the
I
motion,
said.
Yeah.
He said, vote on what Pete said.
yeah, that'll work. That's, vote, that means everything
I
other
like to
than
amend my
James
motion to
Creek.
what Peter said.
Perfect, fine.
And Peter?
Take a
Peter,
vote.
Explain to Rich what it was that you just said.
Rich, what it is we've broken it into two areas. On the map that you have in front of you, it shows where the shellfish survey is going to take place. And that goes from Riverside Drive, a little bit south of it, all the way up to the intercoastal waterway. We are taking that portion, that footprint, out of the dredging discussions because that is where we just voted to do a shellfish survey to see what might happen next. Everything else within that we've ever talked about for dredging, Bob is now going to proceed to get the permits and have that as a separate entity.
Okay.
That's what we're voting on.
That's what we're voting on. That's the motion. You understand, Carol?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions with regarding the motion? I hesitate to ask that.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it.
Was that unanimous?
No.
They're
You,
just
were you in
permitted
favor of it?
areas.
Or not? What is
He
the
meant to
motion?
say no.
The motion is,
You know I'm deaf as a doornail.
the motion is.
That is, in all
everything
fairness to
other
Rich, he
than
has
this.
trouble hearing. and he
Everything
can't
other
hear the
than this is
conversation.
what?
That we've ever talked about dredging, which is Mary's Turtles, the feeder canal, the Back Bay area.
What is the status of those
The
areas?
motion is to go ahead and make that application and proceed with getting a permit to do that. to
A
dredge
separate
those.
permit?
A separate permit.
A
Yes.
separate permit?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the motion.
Yeah,
You in
okay.
favor of that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's
Unanimous.
Let's,
But we
and our
have-
comments are going to be short and sweet for the rest of
Hey,
the
Rich,
meeting. I
Rich, put
promise.
your Mickey Mouse ears back on.
All right, can we?
All
Are
right,
we-
thanks,
are
thanks,
we,
thanks, Bob.
Bob, thanks for being patient with us. I appreciate it.
All right, the next is
What'd
the,
you say, Bob? No, I'm only kidding.
the next item is the town administrator's report. No report.
Okay.
Well, we'll take a report as it was submitted.
Hey.
The next item under is number 7, old business discussion concerning the town park observation deck design and costs.
I just want to point one thing out on this before we start this conversation. Some statements were made earlier that, that we will be
Checks in the mail.
leaving money from the part of grant on the table, and we haven't spent everything in the budget. We have in fact spent the entire part of budget, double that. We've spent all of that, and we added money in. How much money have we currently spent on the park? It's going to be more than $840,000.
Almost $1 million,
Well, let's
That's what
hear
was
it from the
budgeted.
finance director.
including the grant of 418. She sent that information out to us.
We have $54,000 left.
But that
Down.
added
No,
to the
it does
whole
not.
original amount.
No, it does not.
Okay, the part of grant is $419,000?
Our match is $418,000.
Okay, so we've
And the-
spent $418,000 of the, plus
We-
$418,000 from the part of, haven't we?
We have spent,
How much have we
Could we
currently
let her
spent?
We have
go ahead
spent-
answer?
okay, we have spent a total projected, because we still have the observation deck,
But we've spent, if the observation deck goes at 15,000, we will have spent $839,000. We have budgeted 980,000, and what that includes is twice 418, which is 837, plus 120. And the 120 was to pay for shoreline stabilization, park at 15,000, park design and oversight at 95,000, and contingencies at 10,000. We have spent all of that. So what we have left is money that is coming, it needs to be included with part of, is drawdownable. It's money that we can draw down from the part of grant.
How much was that?
Which means,
54,000?
well, 54,000 is what's left to draw down. In order for us to draw that down, we have to spend twice that because it's a 50-50 match. So of our original budget that is connected to the part of grant, we need to spend 108,000 roughly so that we can then get reimbursed for half of that at 54,000.
Okay, so this is 14,000.
Right.
And how much are the other items?
Well, we have, of that 54,000 that's eligible for a draw, we can apply about 30,000 to that, which means we have, I didn't figure it this way, so I'm not really prepared to answer these specific questions, but the net result is what I told Councilmember Bennett, that we would be leaving about $30,000 on the table from the part of grant if all we spend from here on out is 15,000 for the observation deck.
But in addition to the 15,000 for the observation deck, you talked about the living shoreline thing, right?
That's not part of this grant.
Okay, and I had another
It's a
question
coincidence that the amounts are the same. Well,
So
they're actually not.
What is part of the grant that we need to finish that we haven't yet done?
Well, it's just the
Anything?
observation deck, from what I understand, is the only item.
One more.
But,
Park sign, the park sign,
and
the
the park
entryway
sign.
sign.
Okay, and the park sign.
Well,
So-
is the question the amount of money left or the
Yes.
items to be done left?
No, it's the amount of money. The original grant included a gazebo or covered picnic area that cost double what we ended up spending on it.
Bonnie,
So-
where does the money go that we don't spend? Back to the state coffer?
We just don't receive it. We can't draw it down.
The state keeps it.
We don't
Right.
have it yet.
We don't have it, so they won't give it to us. If we can't show that we conform to the terms of the grant, and that we spent the money that was connected with the original configuration of the.
We build a smaller observation deck, saves the state some money.
And saves us money, because we have
Saves
to
us.
pay up for it.
So what's the big
Bonnie,
issue?
the only thing that's left is this walkway. And-
No,
And
and
we
the-
satisfy the Part F grant
And the sign.
in this
The-
what?
The
Sign.
sign.
Park
The
sign.
Park sign.
The Rich
Yeah.
Colorado Memorial
And how
Park.
much is that, Susan? I mean, when does the expense train end?
I think now.
Rich, I'd like to make a motion, Mayor, to approve this sum of money, $14,000.
Well, we've
I have
got the-
one question in this before, for
Made a
discussion.
Well,
This says that this is including an educational kiosk detailing the Living Shoreline project and its benefits. We haven't
Yes.
decided that we're doing the Living Shoreline project yet. We don't know what it's going to cost, and we haven't approved it. So how much is the kiosk as part of this thing?
It's not. It's part of the Living Shorelines project.
So it's not part of this.
It
Thank
is
you very
not.
much. Great, okay, no problem.
So my motion is there to vote on this.
Yep.
That's to spend the $14,000.
Spend the $14,000
All right.
to complete.
Any other discussion? Not appearing. All those in
Do
favor?
we?
Well, what does it look like?
Right
Has
there,
anybody-
Rich.
I mean, how long is it?
It's all in the packet.
I mean, we went through the process with the gazebo when we spent half the money available and we have a small roughly 20 by 20 shed with no electricity, no lights, that doesn't have a whole lot of utility to it. The question is, do we want, you know, a 10 by 10 observation platform is, I hate to say this, is smaller than the gazebo and observation platform I put at the end of the dock on my house. I mean, it's not much to that. If you took it and you made it a 10 by 20 or 10 by 16, something where you can go people out there and have more than 4 or 5 people standing there together, you know, looking out at the water. I mean, we have the opportunity. There's money in the grant, so it's not going to cost us all of it to us. It will cost us some, that we don't have to take this minimal design.
You know, one of the issues with the gazebo and with this observation deck is that whether the park is used or not has nothing to do with this, but I think that a lot of people thought that what we were constructing in that park was too much. So I'm just telling you, I know you may not think that, John, but I didn't want a 40 square foot gazebo. I thought that it was just too big for the size of this park. So this, to me, and part of clearly told us we could make a small observation deck. This complies with part of. It gives us something for people to go out and look at, and I don't see any reason to have a big deck and taking up more of the park space on this stuff.
All right, well, the motion on the floor is to spend the $14,000 for this 10 by 10 deck. That's what we're voting on.
Susan, how big is it?
It was Mark's
10 by
motion.
10.
65 feet long.
That was Mark's motion.
That's my motion, to vote on
And-
this $14,000.
We have to, where did Rich get back?
Oh, we're going to vote on it now, Rich.
And can I get some advice from you, Susan, on the size, the 10 by 10? Would we be better off doing 12 by 12? Would that satisfy
Here we go, 2 feet
some of
against
John's
gazebo.
concerns to make it just a, 10 by 10 is small.
It is very small, but if you take it and make it wider, 10 by 20.
How about 10 by 12?
There's a motion, Bob. Let them.
Well, she can
So I'm
it's
just
part of
asking you.
discussion. It's part of
Is
discussion
10
on
by
the
10
motion.
sufficient for an observation deck for people to go out and look at the water? We're not talking about crowds of people.
Yes, how much of room do you need to go look at the wildlife? 40 by 40? Can we fit the
No,
whole town of
no,
Sunset Beach
no.
out there?
The original proposal was 10 by 20. As a compromise, maybe we can go 10 by 15 for an amount not to exceed $20,000, because I don't know what that cost would be, but I do know it'd be less than $20,000.
Well, Mark's got the motion, he's entitled to a vote on it. The vote is to spend the $14,000 for the 10 by 10 deck. That's the motion.
I don't know what to do.
10 by
I'm-
10, the
I'm torn.
14,000 for the 10 by 10. Okay?
Any more discussion? I'd like to hear what you guys say.
I think it needs to be a bigger observation deck.
Why, John? I mean, how many people do you want to go out there at one time? Just answer that question.
I want families to be able to go out there and hang around a little bit.
10 by 10 is big for 5, 6, 7 people. I don't understand why it's got to be bigger, bigger, and bigger.
Well, wait, I think we've expressed our opinions. I don't
Yeah.
know, there's going to be a different opinion
Shoot.
the longer we go on this. All right, that's the motion.
I don't know what to do.
All those,
I don't have
I just don't think you should, take the beautiful park, and when you look out there, you see an observation deck instead of in the coastal waterway.
It's
And that's
over,
fine.
it's over at the side.
I know, but Pete, there's swings right there. You look
But
it right to it.
don't overstate your case.
Pete, it's still there. It's
Don't
in your
raise your
view.
voice at me.
It's in your view. My motion's there. Don't vote on it. You guys are running
You
this
know,
straight out of
this
me.
is what's wrong with council right now. And this is why I'm having a very hard time making a decision. If the two of you, and the two of you, could just get together and come up with a solution that you can all live with, that would make my life a hell of a lot easier.
Don't play the victim, Carol.
I am playing the victim.
Well, you put yourself in that position.
all right, let's go, all right.
Jerk.
All right, the motion's on the floor. I'm going to call for a vote on it. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Hold it.
Nay.
I'm going to say yes to what the town staff has provided in front of me right
Okay.
here.
All right,
Which is the 14,000 for a 10 by 10 deck.
all right, take a
Okay.
vote.
It's 14,000 for the 10 by 10 deck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so,
How did Rich vote?
Did you vote for yes or no for the 10 by 10 deck? Yes or no for the 10 by 10 deck?
Yes, that's what
You
we
voted yes.
approved. Thank you.
Well-
Thank you, Bob.
Where's John? Sure.
Next item on the agenda is the ordinance 93.01 premises in the kept clean notice of violation. That's Hiram.
Good evening. I was asked to prepare some proposed language to update our, well, for lack of a better term, it's our nuisance abatement ordinances pertaining to grass, junk, things like that in the private properties. 93.01 largely read for mostly undeveloped lots need to be bush hogged down to 4 inches. Over time, that's been led to developed lots, anything over 4 inches having to be in violation, which is a little short. So we took this opportunity to increase to an actual violation length that seems to be average across the state, 12 inches. You can get a good 12-inch growth in some yards around here after, you know, a nice heavy rain for a few days. But yeah, well, I mean, not as 12 inch. You can get like a 6-inch growth. So the 4 inches have felt a little bit too confining to developed lots, especially with absentee homeowners.
Hiram, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Again, I don't want to ruin your train of thought here, but it appears to me that an undeveloped lot, you got to cut it twice a year. You got to cut it down to 4 inches.
Right.
But after 3 weeks, it could be up a foot again, and you can't make them do anything until the next 6-month anniversary comes. So that's what we differentiate. If you live on a lot and have a house, you can't let it get above 12 inches.
Right.
If you have an undeveloped lot, you cut it down to 4 inches every 6 months.
That's
May and September.
Well, May and September.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be, you know, cut and chasing. Is that, in a nutshell, what we're really saying here?
Yes, and which is, you know, the twice a year thing's how it's been for ever since this ordinance was written, and I can't tell you when that happened.
Well, it used to be when it needed to be cut, it was cut by the town. Town cut it, and I think, Susan, am I correct? And then Susan kind of ruined it. But, you know, like, Hiram, the lot behind my house was cut just the other day. Like you said, it rains for a whole week almost. Now it's back up to 8 inches.
Right.
And by July, it's going to be 12, 13 inches high until all the way into October again.
Yeah, but then they have to cut it.
In October, but that whole 4 or 5 months, it's this high.
Yeah, but you can't make somebody on an undeveloped lot cut it down to 4 inches every, I mean, it's not a lawn.
All right. First of all, this
Yeah,
didn't
but I like
go-
the rules we had last time, Pete. Well, the town went in there and did it and charged her $25. I know Susan's hitting me over here, but
I want to really
Well, it
throw
cost
it.
you 200 in other towns. I've
Hiram,
been.
is this something that could go to the planning board, or is this not appropriate to the planning board?
This isn't a land use matter. This is
that
this
was
is
question number
the
one.
town ordinance. That's really, it's a police action, not a land use action.
To save some time, because there are some questions on some of this, I think it probably needs a little more. But right now, I think what we asked you to do is really come up with a definition, and this doesn't do the one thing that I thought we were going to get, which was to exclude seagrasses and ornamental grasses from the definition of like Bermuda grass.
If I may, real quick, if you look at number 4 under B,
That's exactly what I'm looking at.
it
I'm
talks
looking
about
at page
cultivated
2.
vegetative areas. That would be
It says cultivated flowers, shrubbery, vegetables, crops,
It
or to
says-
public areas, and I think all we really needed was something in there saying it does not apply to seagrasses and ornamental grasses. That's not in there.
well,
So I
it's got vegetative areas. I would interpret to be that way. That covers
doesn't
the
say
gamut.
vegetated areas.
It says this section shall not apply to planted and cultivated vegetative areas.
It's mine says flowers, shrubbery, vegetables, crops, or to public areas maintained as natural habitats.
That's after vegetated areas.
Where do you see vegetated
Right
areas?
before flowers.
What page are you on?
Oh, I see what happened in the actual ordinance versus the language. There's a typo. The language that I typed up versus the one that made it to the ordinance, there's just a minor
Well,
typo.
I'm reading the one that made it to the ordinance, and
Sorry.
it doesn't cover the one situation we needed covered. I'm reading the first one.
If you just look on
What-
page 2.
I think
I
what-
still don't see it.
I count-
Oh, cultivated vegetation, okay, I see that on your first version. But I don't, cultivated vegetative,
Mine's different.
no, that's the second one. That's-
In my opinion, that'll cover the gamut of any possibility of someone coming up and saying, this is this is the type of, this is the grasses I want to preserve. I want to preserve this type of dune look, and my developed yard is not a dune. I mean, it could run anything, and as long as they could prove that they're cultivated and they're tending to it, it's not a violation.
All right, so as
What
long
we're
as we
looking
put
at
that
is
back in the actual thing.
Yes,
Okay,
but what we're
that's-
looking to do is just determine what's a violation and what's not.
All right, well, I'm looking at at the second part of it, okay? Right, which part am I looking at? The ordinance, okay?
Right, the actual ordinance part, and then we can just add in that language that was in my template draft.
Okay, so, number 2, I didn't understand that. It said, whenever this Division 2 is violated, you don't mean, what did you mean to say? Whenever this section is violated?
Where are we talking about?
I'm on page 2,
Mhm.
number 2 at the top of the page.
Yeah, it should be B.
I didn't
No,
understand.
it should be 2 under this B. It's saying this number 2, whenever this Division 2 is violated, the entire lot must be cleaned. It's not just,
You don't mean, you mean section?
It could be
Whenever
section.
this section, whenever section 2 is
well,
violated?
whenever section B2 would be more appropriate then. Or
The entire
subsection
lot
B2.
must be cleared? I didn't understand that either.
Well,
What
let's
are you
say
asking?
that your front yard is at 12 inches, but your backyard's only at 6. Mow the whole yard.
That's not appropriate.
Mayor,
Susan?
Mayor.
Standard language.
Since there's so many questions and maybe some confusion, why don't we move this to the 18th for further discussion, since we're not taking any action on any lots at this point in time?
Yes.
So moved.
Next, we don't need to move, we're just gonna,
Be my guest. Yep.
we're just moving it. All right. The next item is consideration of adoption of the budget ordinance to accompany the record fire truck purchase decision approved on 9/20/2016 to record the initial loan payment.
This is
Are
all
these just housekeeping?
housekeeping.
Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the 3 budget ordinances as listed as attachment D, E, and F.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
The next is the consideration of the UDO amendment regarding landscaping and buffering, preservation of trees. We've had the public hearing. Tom, do you want to participate in this with
I wish
Hiram?
you would, Tom. So this is going back to that statement that was made earlier. My recollection on the original UDO was that the compromise was that, because I think golf courses had to ask for permission for cutting any trees down before that. And the compromise was they had to ask for permission for 25 trees. Now, I am not a golfer. I want to protect the golf courses. It's in the best interest of this town to do whatever we can to protect the golf courses. However, I'm a little concerned that allowing them to cut any tree that isn't a heritage tree, and around here, that's mostly pine scrub, that's what most of our trees are, that they can just cut them down. And I don't think that's what the town would want to see. So I'm just concerned that this goes a little too far.
Well,
Our
there's,
thinking was that, golf courses are not in the business of cutting down trees. They are every bit as interested in maintaining the appearance of the golf course as the homeowners that are adjoining that property is, and all of us would want to be. I think trees are as big a part of golf courses as are fairways and greens. So we just did not believe that golf courses are going to go in there and take trees down without reason.
And yet,
all of
Karen
these
just
golf
talked
courses-
about Sandpiper Bay, that went in and cut down hundreds of trees. Is that correct?
Was that not utility? utility company doing that, not the golf courses?
It's okay.
No, it's not.
I need the information.
I can give you the information, I have it up here.
That were nowhere near their wires, and when I asked why they cut them down, they said, well, the golf course asked us to. But that's not the cutting that caused so much consternation in my community. It was, I don't know, you'll have to forgive me, maybe it was a year ago, where suddenly hundreds of trees disappeared. We all recognize that if a pine tree is causing the cart path to buckle, that's a problem for the golf course. And yes, they would want to take that down. But it goes well, if you don't live on a golf course, you don't see it. But I can attest that
Right or wrong, that was our thinking.
Well,
The
Tom,
golf courses
Tom-
were not going to be looking to take down trees that they did not need to take down.
Well,
to
Tom,
protect the turf.
playing golf for 40 years, golf courses do not like trees because of the air circulation, the destruction of cart paths. They are their enemies. I mean, I know a lot of greenskeepers, and if you let them, they'll take all the trees down they can. So I think we need to relook at
Okay,
this
so
again.
what we had in there before was that they could remove trees not deemed to be a heritage tree within 10 feet of any functioning golf cart. That's what was in the, that's what the UDO had in there. That was the compromise. They could do 25 trees a year, plus they could cut down non-heritage trees within 10 feet of a golf cart. Now we're saying they can cut down any trees they want, period. And I'm still troubled by that. I'm sorry, Tom.
If I may, real quick, also it said for all trees in excess of 25, golf courses must comply with the town's standard tree removal policy, and the standard tree removal policy only affects heritage trees.
And that's where you have to replace the kind.
That wasn't the intent.
I understand that's not the
So
intent,
just
but that's the way it
because-
read, and that's
I
the way
understand, but the
it would be
intent was
interpreted.
that there was still some limitation on what they could cut down. And I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say.
Well, but before, I have an issue with that, but I have two other issues. One, I'm looking at, I don't know which version this is, but it's B2. And the one I'm looking at is page 3. I mentioned this before, at the last time we went over this. It says, for development plans where specific building locations are not shown, a more generalized survey of vegetation may be provided in lieu of heritage tree survey. If I'm a developer, I'm not going to locate the buildings, and I'll never have to do a heritage tree survey. It was taken out of one place, but it wasn't taken out of there. That language is in two different places, was in two different places of the ordinance, and it was taken out under,
From Appendix C.
Appendix C, but it wasn't taken out from there. And that's what my concern is. That gives the builder the right to not locate the building permits, and he avoids ever having to do a heritage tree survey.
But they wouldn't be building anything without showing it on the
You're talking about when they come in for I mean, if you're going to do a subdivision, just locate the lots and don't locate the buildings. You don't have to do a heritage tree survey, and they could remove the heritage trees. You're not requiring a heritage tree survey. It's the same as the other
Yeah,
stuff where you
but-
don't require it in the areas where there's not be no building.
But the UD also says you can take down a heritage tree if it's within the buildable footprint
Right, they have
of
to
your
show
lot.
cause to remove a heritage tree regardless under the ordinance. If they don't have to do a survey, they don't have to go through the process.
Well,
of
why was it
bounds
taken out of,
and
why was it taken out of the appendix?
It was moved from the appendix to this section. What it is Wes just wanted to consolidate all the information. to the
Well, I
same
just see an
section.
opportunity for a developer to take advantage of it. I mean, if I was a developer, that's what I would do.
So how would you change the language?
I wouldn't have that in there. I wouldn't, you have to provide in a development plan, you gotta have a heritage tree survey anyway, except in the areas where there's going to ever be building, like the watershed areas, or, as the language includes in here. I don't have any problem with that. But where there's intended to be building, I think there needs to be. My second problem is, what I generated the first time this ever came up was the concern of locating. It's been and it was based on my experience, that cart paths are not where they're supposed to be, and they're not on property that, I shouldn't say they're not. The portions of them are not all on the golf course property. So if you permit within 10 feet of a golf cart, you're now, if a golf cart path, you're into, chances are you're probably into some private property. But secondly, even without the cart path issue, with the submission that we got that generated this in the first place from Sea Trail, they located trees by description, location description, not any kind of a site plan location where they located the trees. And the lot lines are not where those trees are on, some of them are on private property. And I know the comment is that, well, that's an issue between the private property owner and the golf court, of course, but it isn't. It's going to be back in our lap because we permit it.
Well, not really. Our ordinances say they're supposed to move it from their private property, regardless. But it's still a civil matter between them and the person they're removing off their property. If they come to us and certify that it's on their property, I mean, unless we hire a surveyor, we have to take their word for it. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, we don't keep constant surveys of the entire town. There's no way to check against it. And that's why it's traditionally a civil matter for tree removal in the first place, is because it's between two property owners. Right. It's not between us and those two property owners.
Yeah, but if you're granting permits, building permits and whatnot, then it's more than just a civil matter between two property owners.
Well, we wouldn't, under this ordinance, be granting them a permit. Unless it's a heritage tree, at which point,
well,
they'd have to prove that a cause to get rid of the heritage tree. If you want to get rid of the number of trees,
I think just having a certification, you and I have talked about this in regard to other things, just having a certification that says this is true doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it for me because reliance on even an engineer certification, because you and I have had this discussion, the plans don't show reality, and even though there's an engineering seal on it and a certification, I think that if I had my druthers, and I'm not proposing it, we should have all independent engineering reviews, but that's for another time. But I anticipate. I use the example, the cart path on Oyster Bay between 17 and 18 goes right through the middle of private property. It's no easement. It's 100% on a private property.
What were we doing before this? Were we requiring anything?
And well, they had to have a permit for 25 trees.
Original language had a permit would be required for tracking purposes. However, no basis for removal would be required for up to 25 trees. And for the portion on the cart path, it said they could just remove them.
Yeah, they did say within 10 feet, so they're not going to ever come up with a site plan for us.
I don't want to beat it to death. I mean, it's up to the council to decide what they want to do. And that's a concern that I had that I expressed going into it. And I got chastised by the press for appearing at the planning board and telling the planning board, expressing my concern, and it didn't get in the ordinance at all. That was my concern. But it's up to the council. I don't want to beat it to death.
To be fair, I really don't know legally how to address your concern with that. If the concern is that we can't challenge surveyors and engineers.
Okay, so
no, but you can require at least something that locates the trees.
Well, and right now that's the heritage tree survey is for.
It's not a heritage tree survey. One of the reports that Sea Trail came in had 939 trees they wanted to take down on the Maple. Not that they didn't want to take down. There was a recommendation they take down 939 trees on the Maples golf course. The Sea Trail didn't go with that. But if they went with that, the way this is written, they could come in and take down 939 trees, and you would have not you, but the town would have no idea where they came. As long as they weren't heritage, they'd have no idea where they came from.
Tom, was any thought given to something in between no permit required and 25 trees a year? Did you have any discussion of saying 50 trees a year, 100 trees a year?
No, I can't say that we did.
Can I suggest this? If the council isn't inclined to adopt the ordinance tonight, is that we talk with Legends, you talk with the people that run Sandpiper and the people that run Sea Trail, and see how they would address it, so that we're not imposing something on them that they don't want. Well, I don't know what their opinion is. I mean, we could do it.
Tom, I don't understand, why don't we just require a permit up to 25 trees for a permit, to make it simple? If they're gonna take 25 trees down or more, they have to get a permit.
Well, that's what we had before.
That's what it was before. But the problem was that they came in and they on the maples, Citro wanted to remove 100 and some, and they couldn't under the ordinance. That's what generated the whole thing in the first place.
Hiram, I just have one question. I have to admit, I grew up in the city. We didn't have any trees. Okay? So you can call me a tree hugger. And my concern is just simple. A number of my friends who had trees torn down in Sea Trail, and when they clear cut, boy, they can do a job, had sinkholes. Now, if we cut so many trees, is there a probability of sinkholes? Have you ever heard of such a thing?
I've honestly never heard of anything like that. I'm not a geologist either, so I'm not going to speak onto that.
A sinkhole is created, Rich, when they cut the tree off at the ground, then they come in with a stump grinder, and all they do is create a pile of sawdust, and then they put about 2 inches of dirt over it. And over about 5 years, you end up with about a foot depression right there.
Is that how it happens?
Because the sawdust is now rotting.
Thank
The
you.
golf courses, they wouldn't have come in because they would have loved this version. We're not hearing from them. But have we sat down with with the golf courses, say, what's a happy medium here?
Yeah.
Between nothing and 25?
We did have some representatives from golf
And?
courses at one of our early meetings, and, they really didn't offer a whole lot.
I'm just wondering if there isn't some happy medium.
Well, if I may, the concerns y'all are bringing up, I mean, we wouldn't need to change our ordinance at all. I mean,
But
the only thing
we
you'd have
want
to-
to
the only
help
thing
the
you would-
golf courses.
The only thing you
Let
would
them
need.
apply for a
well,
permit.
The problem here is, I mean, I'm trying to have a hard time understanding. There's heritage trees and there's non-heritage trees. Do we want to make it easier to get rid of non-heritage trees to help out golf courses, or do we want to keep them from removing non-heritage trees? Because if we want to keep them from removing non-heritage trees, the simple solution is to leave the ordinance as it is and then remove the old B that says for all trees in excess they comply with the town's standard tree removal policy, and instead amend it to say for all trees in excess of 25, even non-heritage trees must conform to the
No, I would allow
standard
them to
policy.
go in for a permit with an explanation of what they're taking down and where they are and why. So what we're trying to do is protect the people who live in this town.
Right, but what I'm
You
saying
know-
is, right now as it stands, it's supposed to cover all trees. The hiccup is that our ordinances say they only have to worry about heritage trees over 25. If you want them to do a permit for all trees, then we need to change that language.
We need to go fix whatever that inconsistency is and
Right,
keep
but-
the language that says any golf course may remove up to 25 trees, and don't limit it to heritage trees. But with
that's what it says right now.
justification for if they want additional trees, I would put something in saying they could request an exception to that, with a explanation on what they're planning to do, and let that go to the planning board. Let them look at it and say, this looks okay.
Which is what I just said. All we'd have to do is amend that part that says that they must comply with the standard tree removal policy and say that even non-heritage trees must comply with the standard tree removal policy. Because then they'd have to do justification for non-heritage trees.
Right.
I agree with that. That'd be fine with me.
Will you be offended? Will the planning board be upset? I know you've had many discussions about this.
But if I may real quick, since
And
it's
I think
such a-
people have forgotten that originally we were trying to limit that, the non-heritage trees from being cut down. That was the reason the UDO thing was put in there in the first place. And the concession was allowing them up to 25. That was a concession.
May I recommend tabling the decision on this?
Fine.
To come back with updated
Fine.
language?
Sure.
Fine. That's fine.
And then I can run it by the planning board with the updated language and come back to you.
We don't really have to table it, we'll just carry it to another meeting, because there's no motion right now to.
Right, but we've had our public hearings, so we
Right.
don't actually technically have to have another one.
Right.
So if we just table the decision, or however you
Done.
want to do it, we can take it to the planning board, have them review the updated language, and still come back with another
That's
recommendation
fine.
as well.
That's fine.
Bob, I'd like to move to the resolution for
Cobra?
the Cobra.
Yeah, that's the next thing. The consideration of the Cobra area resolution. You've all seen, you all should have gotten a copy. Lisa provided a copy of Grady's revisions. I reviewed them, I'm satisfied with them. And I assume that's the version that you want
Yes,
to
I'd
move.
like to make a motion to approve this.
I've not seen it.
Basically, what it did is it cleaned up language to, it's pretty close to the one that was done, but it cleaned it up to cover our rear ends in the litigation.
And so our attorney was satisfied that this wouldn't put us in a negative position in terms of ongoing lawsuits?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. So there's a motion?
There's a
Peter's-
motion.
Peter's reading it, he hasn't seen it. Okay, there's a motion. Adopt the resolution. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The next item under new business is consideration of the acceptance of planning board recommendation for UDO amendments for zoning districts, BB1.
Bob, we got Susan.
Susan.
Actually, you had a number I.
Oh, yes, you're right. I'm
Under
sorry.
old business.
I'm sorry. It was the added annual report. Let me, before anybody says anything, on the annual report, either we resolve it tonight.
Yep.
Or I suggest we don't send it.
I agree.
We got comments from Rich and we got comments from Carol regarding the, and if I can characterize Rich's, he basically, and Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the message from the mayor and council is the source of your major criticism, and you didn't want to participate, you think the language about the sound financial condition is not correct, and if it's in there, that you wanted to have names associated with it and not one of them not be yours. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Carol, yours is, are
I
they
had given-
housekeeping items or?
Yeah, I had given Lisa some changes. A couple of them just never made it in.
Oh, yeah, John did too, you're right. Lisa, have you had a chance to see Carol's? They just housekeeping? Have you had a chance to see John's? They just housekeeping? We gotta keep her around, she moves things along. All right, what do you want to do on the, what does the council want to do on the message from the mayor and council?
What?
Mr. Mayor.
In the other discussions during the budget period of time, that has said anything contrary to us being in sound financial condition. That's a good statement that we should keep in there.
All right, Rich?
Rich, you're going to hate what I'm going to say, but your name isn't on this. None of our names are on it. I make a motion that we approve the annual report with the changes you've gotten today, and we get that sent out immediately.
All right, you have a chance to discuss, go ahead.
Ms. Scott, I'm a council member.
I know.
And I do not want to knowingly misinform and give residents incomplete information. The idea that we can say that we are financially sound based on an audit a year ago with the many liabilities that we have ahead is misleading the people.
Plus, well, Rich, to add to that.
That's my opinion.
We fired that auditor.
Let me finish. I don't want my name on it. And I don't know how I do that. If you want to put your name on it, put your name on it. Don't put mine.
Well,
Don't put mine.
the motion is to send it out with the housekeeping changes that were submitted by Carolyn, John, and
You know, we pass things all the time, and we get 3-2 votes and 4-1 votes, and sometimes, if we're really lucky, 5-0 votes. And when they go out and press releases are issued or announcements are made that we've approved this, we do not say that, you know, 2 people voted against it. That person doesn't like that thing, but the other 4 people voted for it. It's just not the way it works, Rich, and I don't think the annual report is any different than everything else. We said we were going to do one last one. I agreed to one last one. We cut the thing down to 4 pages, which I'm happy about, and I'm glad it will be the last one.
This is an election year, and this is nothing more than political. And you know it, Ms. Scott.
all right.
Don't look at me, because I'm not going to probably be part of the whole process.
I'm going to call for a vote. The motion was to publish it with the housekeeping changes as it was prepared. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, the ayes have it. New business is the Beach B1 Business District hearing, to set it for a hearing on August 7th.
Whether we agree or not, we still have to set
We have to have the public hearing.
Right,
Yes.
just, all we're asking is that you accept the planning board's recommendation for denial and then set the public hearing for August 7th.
So done. So moved.
So move. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next is accept the planning board recommendation for relating to building code regulations, standards, and schedule for public hearing for August 7th.
As this has been before the planning board.
Right.
It's their recommendations, yeah.
And their recommendation is to recommend approval and set the public hearing for August 7th. I just want to point out that this is a large sum of the information that got left out of the UDO during its adoption from the building regulation standards that were put in here with a few minor updates to current codes.
All right, do I have a motion?
Well, what I have here is just street display. It's not that. We have the whole bit about the duties of the inspector and all of that. That's in chapter 51.
That
Right?
stuff's regulated by state, but it's also coming into the next round of
Okay.
this. This is not the end all be all because there's still a minimum housing unsafe building part as well.
Okay.
Do I have a motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The next is consideration of the acceptance of the street paving petition, town clerk certification for North Shore Drive, and authorization for staff to obtain cost estimate.
Bob, I'd like to move that we tell the Susan Parker, town administrator, to go forward with
The next step.
next step.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next is consideration of acceptance of street paving petition, town clerk certification for Cobia Street, and authorization for staff to obtain cost estimates. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item is the consideration of establishing a date of July 18 for an appeal to hear an appeal of order to take corrective action for Palm Cove Lot 8 and Palm Cove Lot 9 issued by Mr. Marziano on June 13. This is really just to set the date, isn't it?
Yeah, but if there's any information you want to talk about this right now before you set the hearing date, just be clear on it. Their letter requesting a date in the fall, to which I think is a little too far off, because then this doesn't stay their time frame they have by our ordinances. So if y'all uphold my decisions and you wait till the fall, then they've got extremely less time to fix the problems. Then, you know, if we do it.
Let's move it to August. I have one quick question. Pardon? When we were moving it to
July 18.
That's fine. We're going to change the date, yeah.
Okay.
I have one question, Hiram.
Okay.
If the new flood maps are adopted, and if they are, if they're adopted, when and if they get adopted, and the VE zone is changed to an AE zone, what are the rules at that point for what they've done? Would what they have done comply or not? With
still no.
AE, still no. That's what I want to know.
And for 2 reasons real quick. One, the preliminary maps will still have them in a VE zone, not an AE zone. And 2, anytime it's a breakaway wall, this stuff's attached to a breakaway wall, they'd have to turn the wall permanent, which, you know, as it stands right now and currently it'd be a violation even in AE because it's a breakaway wall.
All right, motion to set the hearing for July 8th or any other date set to 18th, or any other date that is substituted for that date. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The next is to review agenda items, identify new items for July 18. On the upcoming agenda items, we have the consideration of the approval of the proposed 12-foot access easement for Twin Lakes,
We now have the hearing.
the hearing on this issue, and we have,
And the park rules
right.
discussion.
Mayor, were we waiting for me to get back from Raleigh to determine when the next date would be? Because you guys already met in closed session to...
No, we didn't even discuss what date it would be, but we probably should. Instead of July 18th, what date we're gonna?
July 17th,
Monday, the 17th?
because otherwise I'm at the British Open,
I'm
so
fine.
I'm gone.
British Open.
So Monday, the 17th, a day meeting or a night meeting? Because normally it would be a night, I mean a day,
Day.
9 o'clock.
18th, you're gone, right?
No, I'm here.
Monday, the 17th at 9
You
a.m.
got it.
9 o'clock on Monday, the 17th.
Number 9.
July. If we've done it.
The way things have been going, John, you better not have an early time to leave on the 18th.
I've got to get up at the crack of dawn, so.
Yeah, I checked my reservations. Yeah, okay. Now is the opportunity for public comments. Comments would be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. If you have a public comment, if you can step forward and state your name and address, please. Sir, I'll get you, Charlie.
Dave Eastburn, 424 32nd Street. I just had a question on the last item that you just voted on, establishing the hearing. When I was reading through the materials here, there was a FEMA letter that said that the town of Sunset Beach has until, and I lost the page here, I think it said June 30th as a deadline to provide evidence that all the corrections have been completed.
Well, it's my understanding, Susan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the planning directors communicated with them, and they've been violated, and FEMA's aware that the violation, and under our ordinance, they have the right to appeal to the council, so there isn't much more we can do.
Yes,
Okay.
the appeal isn't combined within the June 30th deadline. It just extends it beyond that, because they have that right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Way past my bedtime. Charlie Nern, 647 Oyster Bay Drive. You were talking about the trees on the golf courses. I go back to my bike riding days before all my surgeries. Randy Walters was still building inspector. I was riding on Oyster Bay, and first I see all these trees marked. Then I start seeing trees coming down, and there were just piles of trees. So I came up here thinking, do they have permission for this? And Randy was the one here, and I spoke to him. He said that they had come looking for permission, had Randy went over, rode around with the superintendent and a arborist, and they okayed all the trees coming down. So I can't remember if that was before or after the UDO, but if that sheds any light on the subject, that's all I was trying to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? None appearing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. No motion? No motion? All those in favor? Aye.